Hey guys, tonight we drift into a side of history that rarely gets stage time, quiet, wind-blown, and scented with ancient oils. You're in the Sahel now, somewhere between the soft dunes of the southern Sahara and the green reach of the savannah. The night is warm, the moon casts sleepy silver onto the sand. A low wind moves through goat-hide tents, whispering across weathered stones and braided rugs. You duck under the flap of one particular tent, where the air is thick with scent, floral, spicy, and faintly musky. Inside, a woman stirs a pot of dark amber resin with a carved wooden stick, her bracelets softly clinking. You're not just visiting, you're apprenticing tonight. Your new mentor is a scent mistress, an esteemed position among certain Tuareg clans. She doesn't just make perfumes, she engineers identity, reputation, desire. What's that scent on a warrior's scarf? Her recipe? What makes a widow's tent smell of sorrow and lingering devotion? Also her. But don't let the glamour fool you. This job requires knowing how long to boil acacia pods before the scent sharpens, or how many pinches of orris root turn a bland base into something dangerously memorable. Your fingers are already sticky from grinding aromatic seeds between two sun-warmed stones. The trick, she tells you, is not the ingredients, it's timing. She tosses dried myrrh into an iron bowl with the same flair modern bartenders use when salting a cocktail rim. A hiss, a puff of smoke, and the air shifts. Just a whiff of this new blend would let anyone know a high-status girl is preparing for marriage. It's basically a medieval version of oversharing on Instagram, but with incense. She hums softly while she works, but you're not allowed to hum yet. Not until you master the scent codes. Among her people, perfume isn't decoration, it's language. Too much clove and someone might think you're summoning vengeance. Not enough musk and you'll be seen as cold. Historians still argue whether these scent traditions were rigidly codified or more improvisational. Some scholars point to consistent patterns in burial oils. Others argue that everything varied by family, moon phase, or even gossip. Speaking of gossip, your mentor pauses her stirring to tell you how one young bride overdid her veil oil and accidentally triggered a village feud. Apparently too much saffron meant she was mocking her new mother-in-law's fertility. The feud lasted 3 years, a goat got hexed, and no one wore saffron for a decade. You nod solemnly, pretending not to laugh. As the night deepens, your mentor begins preparing a scent meant for warriors about to leave on a long journey. This one is woody, earthy, and topped with dried marula bark. A scent said to keep the mind clear and the stomach calm. You hold the small leather pouch open while she folds the scented cloth inside. Make sure it doesn't touch your own skin, she warns, or you'll dream of desert fires and never sleep again. That's probably superstition, probably. You work in silence for a while, occasionally adjusting the heated stones or adding droplets of water to simmering pots. It's not glamorous, your knees ache and your nose itches from the spice, but there's something hypnotic about it, something holy. When she hands you a nearly finished scent cone, rich with crushed date pits and cardamom, you almost hesitate to pack it. It feels too alive, like it might whisper if you listened closely. Your hands are stained now, not unlike a barista's after a long shift. But unlike coffee, these scents will linger for days, weeks even. She shows you how to seal a batch with beeswax, then roll it in cotton dyed with mud to preserve its balance. This part feels almost alchemical. You catch yourself wondering whether medieval perfumers like her should count as chemists. Some modern historians say yes. Others say they were artisans with unusually good noses. The truth probably lies somewhere between a cauldron and a cosmetic case. You're getting drowsy now. The heat, the heady air, and the quiet rhythm of the scent mistress's work lull you into a kind of trance. She hands you a final task before sleep. Place a cone of calming lavender and cedar near the edge of the tent, just where the breeze can catch it. It'll keep away nightmares, she whispers. You nod, even though the only nightmare you fear is accidentally dropping the mortar and waking the entire camel camp. Outside, the wind whistles gently through the grasses. Inside, the scent of sleep coils like a lazy ribbon through the shadows. No job interview, no Excel spreadsheets. Just you, your ancient tools, and the steady heartbeat of someone who's made scent into ceremony. You breathe in deeply, already forgetting the century you came from. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The morning doesn't come with roosters here. It arrives with footsteps, heavy ones, deliberate and adorned in gold. You're barely stirring from your mat when a messenger pokes her head into the tent and calls your name. The Queen Mother requests you, she says, as if you weren't still half asleep and smelling faintly of cedar. You shuffle into your sandals, wrap your scarf haphazardly, and follow her into the sunlit maze of the palace grounds. Today you are no longer a scent mistress's apprentice. You are stepping into one of the strangest prestige jobs in the Ashanti Kingdom, royal stool bearer. No, not a furniture mover. You carry the stool, sacred, gold-leafed, and slightly terrifying. It represents the very soul of the nation, and your job? Don't let it tip over, don't let it touch the ground, definitely don't sit on it. It's less of a seat and more of a divine relic with trust issues. The Queen Mother greets you with a nod, her kente cloth folding like waves as she rises. You'll shadow Adowa today, she says. You glance nervously at Adowa, tall, stern-faced, and already balancing the padded wooden carrier on her shoulder like it weighs nothing. She doesn't speak, she just nods once, and you fall in behind her. You walk slowly through the courtyard, the sun bouncing off golden medallions and silver-threaded tunics. Everyone steps aside. Even the drummers pause mid-beat as Adowa, and now you, pass by with the royal stool swaddled in crimson silk. You're aware of every pebble beneath your sandals, every whisper trailing behind you. It's nerve-wracking. The stool isn't just a prop. It's believed to house ancestral spirits. Historians still argue whether the stool's origin stories are purely symbolic or rooted in real political events from the 17th century. Some scholars claim the golden stool descended from the heavens, yes, literally floated down, while others suspect a more terrestrial unveiling timed with a key unification ceremony. Either way, nobody's handing it to the interns. So today, you're in training. Your first task is to guard it while Adewa speaks with a group of elders. No sitting, she reminds you for the fourth time, eyeing a curious toddler who keeps inching closer. You gently step between the child and the stool like a bouncer at a spiritual nightclub. Later, you're summoned into a shaded room where the stool must be placed, elevated, of course, on a carved pedestal. You aren't allowed to turn your back to it while exiting. You awkwardly shuffle out sideways like someone forgetting how doors work. Adowa watches with her arms crossed, possibly judging you, definitely judging you. But by midday, you're getting into the rhythm. You're learning how to balance grace with vigilance. At one point, an old noblewoman starts rambling about a scandal involving melon wine and a missing hair ornament. You find yourself leaning in. Then you remember, don't eavesdrop, but how can you not? These palace corridors are basically medieval tabloid offices. Gossip is currency. The Queen Mother calls for tea. You bring it without blinking. You've begun to understand that the stool bearer is more than a ceremonial role. It's symbolic. You're an extension of royal memory, a presence in the room that says, yes, your ancestors are watching, and no, you may not skip the protocol. It's somewhere between being a security guard, a heritage preservationist, and a very quiet therapist. There's a moment of downtime in the late afternoon. You sit on a shaded bench, watching Adowa gently polish the stool with palm oil. People think it's about gold, she finally says. Her voice is soft, like she only speaks when it matters. But it's about what the gold holds. You nod, not quite sure what that means, but sensing the weight of it anyway. By evening, you've followed the stool through rituals, mediations, and a slightly awkward poetry reading. You've intercepted a monkey that tried to grab the ceremonial cloth. You've nearly sneezed, twice, but held it in with the sheer force of will. Now the stool rests once more on its pedestal, tucked beneath an awning that glows in the lantern light. You step back, sore-footed but somehow proud. You catch a glimpse of your reflection in a polished brass basin. You look tired, regal but tired. Maybe next time you'll remember not to wear a scarf that unravels every 10 minutes. As the palace quiets and the stars begin to peek through the silken dusk, you slip away, careful not to look directly at the stool. It's said that if you do, and you think ill thoughts, your dreams will fill with ancestral reprimands, and nobody wants ghost lectures at 2 a.m. You head to your mat under the tamarind tree, curl into the worn blanket, and let the day slip out of your bones. Another peculiar job, another piece of history, worn into the soles of your feet. And if you dream of golden stools hovering mid-air or stern women named Adowa, well, welcome to the club. Tonight begins with a hush, the kind of hush that settles in after dinner, but before the stars have truly gathered their full shine. You lie on your woven mat, listening to distant drums pulse like a heartbeat behind the hills. A shadow slips by the tent flap. It's your summons again, but gentler this time. You're not being called to bear any golden relics. No, tonight your task is, well, musical. You're apprenticing under a woman paid to sing lullabies professionally, not just for her own children, mind you, for everyone's. Rich merchants, anxious new mothers, even travelling warlords too proud to admit they can't sleep without a tune. This is your first night as a lullaby specialist. Your mentor meets you at the village edge, sitting on a mat beside a crackling fire. Her voice is already in warm-up mode, soft hums that curl like wood smoke into the evening air. "We don't just sing," she tells you. "We watch. We match the rhythm of breath, the flicker of the fire, the mood of the wind." You nod, awkwardly trying to mimic her hums. You sound like a mosquito with a head cold. She doesn't comment. Your first assignment is a baby, barely 6 days old. Wrapped in dyed cotton and blinking like a confused owl, the child is restless. The mother, clearly on hour 47 of no sleep, gestures for you to take over. You freeze. Your mentor gestures again, slow swaying movements like water rolling against the shore. So you begin, tentatively at first, a hum, a whisper. Words you half remember from the afternoon lesson. Something about the moon and a dancing tree. The child stares at you, unconvinced. You're sweating, but then your mentor joins in, low, steady, grounding. The baby blinks, hiccups once, and falls asleep. You look up like you've just performed magic. In a way you have. Later, your clientele shifts. You're brought into a warrior's tent. He's enormous, scarred, and has probably decapitated someone before breakfast, but he's also clearly exhausted, fidgeting like a child. He can't sleep before raids, someone whispers, gets the shakes. You try not to tremble yourself. You sit by the door where the cool air slides in and begin the same melody. This time it's different, slower, deeper. You incorporate a low hum beneath your breath, the kind that makes the ribs vibrate. The warrior grunts, then shifts, then sighs, and then snores like a falling log. Historians still argue whether these lullaby women were considered healers, musicians, or something between. Some ethnographers call them emotional architects. Others suggest they were hired spies, paid to sing while listening closely for secrets whispered in sleep. No one agrees, but you're starting to suspect all the answers are true. Your mentor explains how each melody carries coded emotion, songs for grief, for joy, for storms. One particularly curious song has 3 different interpretations depending on how you close your lips on the final note. She demonstrates. You try. You sound like a hiccuping goat. Still you're improving. With each household visit, your voice grows steadier, more confident. You begin to understand the importance of pacing. A too fast lullaby might energize instead of soothe. A too slow one risks putting you to sleep before your client. There's even a science to your breathing, long inhales to signal calm, slow exhales to guide your listener's heartbeat. By midnight, you're helping soothe a widow who's been weeping since dusk. You sit beside her, neither touching nor speaking, just humming, a low, repetitive tune your mentor calls the river's knees. Supposedly it mimics the rhythm of gentle waves lapping against stone. Whether or not that's true, the woman eventually quiets. Her breath evens out. The fire crackles. Somewhere in the trees an owl calls. You hum once more, then fall silent. You learn there's even a fee structure for your work. Infants get a rate in gourds of milk or smoked fish. Adults, depending on rank, might pay in woven cloth or even silver coins. One eccentric merchant once tipped with a live tortoise. "It's better than it sounds," your mentor said, then spent 3 weeks teaching it to follow her voice. It never worked. There's a fringe theory that these lullaby singers developed breath control techniques still unmatched by modern vocalists. Some believe they even altered heart rhythms in others through tonal vibration. Is it possible? No one knows for sure. But after watching a trembling goat fall asleep to a lullaby meant for grieving warriors, you're open to the idea. At the end of the night, your mentor gives you a carved flute, just 3 holes worn smooth with time. Some people need more than the voice, she explains, but don't blow unless the air feels right. Whatever that means. You tuck it into your wrap and follow her through the dim paths back to your tent. The moon hangs low now, like it's listening too. You hum as you walk, not for anyone in particular, just for the world. And tonight, the world hums back. It's barely dawn and already the salt wind is curling through the alleys of the trade town like it owns the place. Your eyes are still adjusting to the light as you step out onto the stone path, clutching a bundle of thin scrolls made from dried fish skin. They smell like yesterday's stew, and they're slick with the early morning humidity. But you're not here to complain, you're here to count. You've landed one of the driest, most oddly prestigious positions on this side of the desert, salt trade bookkeeper of Tagaza. Tagaza isn't what you'd call scenic. The whole village is made of salt. Walls of it, bricks of it, even storage huts lined with it. You could probably lick a house and get your daily sodium. The ground crunches underfoot with salt flakes and your sandals have already surrendered to the crust. You pass a half-buried camel skull, nod at a group of drivers loading their beasts and duck into the low tent that serves as the trade hall. Your mentor, a wiry woman with a henna-dyed headscarf and a face carved by the sun, sits on a mat already scribbling. Her fingers are dyed with ink and her gaze barely lifts. "Late," she says. You are not late, you are salt bookkeeper early, but you nod in apology and sit cross-legged beside her. Your first lesson, how to record exactly how many salt slabs are loaded onto which camel, owned by whom, headed where, and promised in exchange for what. Some traders deal in gold, others in textiles, cola nuts, or, more suspiciously, favors to be redeemed at a later date. You learn to write the merchant codes. A tiny goat symbol means they haggle. A crooked spear means don't trust his measurements. Historians still argue whether these early trade records in Tagaza constitute a true accounting system or were more like semi-official receipts. Some evidence suggests centralized auditing, others say it was a free-for-all disguised as a ledger. Either way, your fish-skin scrolls don't lie, mostly because ink won't stick unless you dry the page under a rock first. You assist in tallying today's caravan, 84 camels, 6 owners, 2 junior traders, and 1 boy named Tamba, who claims his goat deserves a bonus for morale boosting. You log each detail using sharpened bone, dipped in a mix of ink and soot. It's slow work. Salt dust keeps sticking to the pages and the tent flaps creak like a gossiping aunt. You learn the trade lingo fast. White sun means overcharge risk. Red slab signals a poor cut. And cloud bellies implies the merchants are in a bad mood because sandstorms are coming. One man tries to slip an extra slab past you, says it was pre-counted. Your mentor stares at him until he folds like warm bread. By midday, you're dizzy from numbers. To wake up, your mentor hands you a mint leaf to chew. Bookkeeping medicine, she says. It's bitter, but it jolts you into focus. Then you're sent outside to verify loading. This is when things get strange. You're introduced to the salt tester. She's an old woman with exactly 1 tooth, which she uses to bite the corners of random slabs. Too soft, she grunts. Too wet, too windy. She declares one slab emotionally unstable and orders it removed. You mark her verdicts without question. Next door, a girl with a reed brush paints merchant symbols on the dried slabs, squiggles, waves, half moons. These are shipping marks so that when the camels arrive 2 weeks later in Timbuktu or Jen, the traders there know who's owed what. One camel accidentally sits on his load and cracks it. The driver swears. The salt tester giggles. You record the damage under transport casualty, camel inflicted. At one point, a merchant brings a slab that shimmers oddly. You lean in, squinting. It has specks of gold dust trapped inside. "From the hidden mine," he whispers, looking both proud and afraid. Your mentor immediately takes it, weighs it, notes the value, and assigns it to the silent ledger, a scroll kept under a separate mat. You don't ask questions, you just watch, carefully. By late afternoon, you're copying totals into the westbound log, a long sheet rolled between two sticks, painted in alternating colors for readability. This is where your handwriting must be flawless. A single smudge and a merchant could lose a shipment, or worse, blame you for it. You hold your breath as you trace the numbers: 84 camels, 1,008 slabs, 9 special markings, 1 salt slab with emotional instability. All noted, all true. You wipe your fingers clean with a cloth soaked in lemon water. Your hands smell like ink, sweat, and faintly of goat. It's not glamorous, but you've done something important. This caravan will feed cities, fund scholars, fuel arguments in royal courts. Somewhere in the distance, a woman begins a slow chant, probably a send-off for the caravan. You pack away your scrolls, carefully aligning the edges so they don't curl. Your mentor finally smiles, the kind that barely moves her lips but softens her whole face. "You counted well," she says. "You beam like a sun-baked pebble." As you shuffle home across the crunchy white ground, the wind picks up, carrying the scent of dust, ink, and maybe, just maybe, a bit of pride. You were once a number hater. Now you count salt like it's poetry. And tonight the camels march because you made their cargo matter. The sun has dipped just enough for the fires to be lit, and you're back in your wrap, perched on a carved stool that's slightly too small for comfort. A smoky haze coils through the compound, thick with the scent of roasted millet, wood ash, and the unmistakable tang of fermented something. Tonight, your services are required in one of the more peculiar culinary-adjacent roles in medieval West Africa, professional taster of tribal brews. You are quite literally here to sip suspicious liquids and declare them safe, delightful, or diplomatically unwise. Your first customer is already waving you over, a middle-aged woman with a jug taller than her torso and confidence that could knock a leopard flat. She pours you a shallow cup of Pito, a fermented millet beer popular across the region. It fizzes gently, not a good sign. It's not supposed to fizz. She eyes you like a hawk wearing lipstick. You swirl the cup, sniff it like a noble at a wine tasting, and take a careful sip. Earthy, slightly sweet, definitely hiding something. You swallow and smile, diplomatic but non-committal. "Could use a rest day in the gourd," you say politely. She nods. You both pretend this batch isn't probably going to cause mild hallucinations. Your job isn't just about flavor, it's politics. Before a village feast or a marriage alliance or a harvest ritual, the local brews must be tasted, not only for safety, but for symbolism. A sour beer might imply bitterness between families. A strong brew could be interpreted as aggressive. And an unfinished ferment? That's just rude. Historians still argue whether tasters like you had real authority or were merely ceremonial. Some oral traditions suggest tasters were trusted advisors with access to every courtyard. Others say they were glorified scapegoats in case the drink caused stomach disaster. Either way, you've been handed a wooden ladle and told to drink everything twice. So here we are. Next up, a wedding brew made with sorghum, flavored with tamarind. The bride's aunt hovers nearby, clutching a rooster and glaring like she's ready to revoke the ceremony if you wrinkle your nose. You take a sip. Then another, smooth, a bit tart, a hint of, was that cinnamon? Risky. You raise an eyebrow. Bold choice. The aunt nods. The rooster relaxes. There's a fringe theory that these tastings evolved into early forms of contract approval. The idea being, if the brew passes, so does the deal. One scholar even suggested tasters were walking notaries, their taste buds signing off on clan alliances. That might be a stretch, but after 5 rounds of millet mash, you do feel like you're holding kingdoms together by your liver. You move through the crowd, weaving between drummers, dancers, and flirty cousins who offer you increasingly suspicious drinks for fun. You're learning to spot signs of trouble. If the brew smells like overripe banana, it's still okay. If it smells like vinegar and rage, run. One concoction turns your tongue blue. You tell the brewer it's very spiritual. He beams. Eventually, you're escorted to the elder's hut. This is where things get formal. A bowl is placed before you, carved with symbols of past harvests. You're meant to drink, then declare a blessing. No pressure. You lift the bowl, sip. It's thick, sour, with a medicinal tang. Possibly bark-infused. You feel your cheeks pucker involuntarily. You pause, then say, "The roots are strong. May our alliances be deeper than the dregs." The elders murmur approval. Someone hands you a banana. You accept it like a medal. One of the women leans over and whispers, "There's a brew made with baobab and lizard eggs. Want to try?" You politely fake a coughing fit and exit the circle. As the evening deepens, you help a young boy learn the ropes, his first tasting shift. He tries too much too quickly and ends up declaring a goat's rinse water, bold, oaky, and promising. You gently steer him toward a real batch and whisper, "Less confidence, more chewing." By moonrise, your teeth feel coated in grain residue and your brain is pleasantly fogged, not drunk, just gently floating, like your thoughts are wrapped in warm banana leaves. The drums have slowed, the torches flicker, and even the most aggressive aunties are swaying with contentment. You sit at the edge of the circle, letting the night hum through you. You've tasted peace offerings, gossip-laced brews, and one herbal mix said to ward off jealous exes. You're not sure if your tongue will ever feel dry again, but your heart, calm, balanced, like the perfect cup. And as your eyes begin to close, one final thought bubbles up. You probably should have skipped that third bowl with the floating scorpion tail. Too late now. Sweet dreams, taster. It's just before sunrise when you're roused by the clinking of loom weights and the unmistakable swish of cloth being beaten into submission. Today's assignment doesn't involve taste buds or tribal politics. No, today you are wrapped in threads, literally, as you begin your first day shadowing a master of one of the most meaningful textile arts in medieval Africa, the weaver of symbolic wrappings. You arrive at the courtyard of the weaving house with crust still in your eyes and a half-hearted stretch. The master weaver, a broad-shouldered woman with fingers like braided rope, gestures for you to sit at the edge of the mat. She's already mid-motion, her foot working the loom pedal, her hands flicking between warp and weft like a sorceress casting spells through thread. You blink. You're here to learn, but mostly not to get in the way. Cloth, she tells you, is a language. Every line, every color, every texture is a syllable in a sentence woven across someone's back. It's not fashion, it's messaging. Wear a certain red and black pattern to a funeral, and you're mourning. Wear that same pattern to a birth ceremony, and you're subtly insulting the midwife. She winks at you. Ask me how I know. Historians still argue whether these color codes were standardized across kingdoms or varied village by village. Some claim a pan-regional textile grammar existed, kind of like emojis in loom form. Others think the messages were hyper-local, passed down in gossipy whispers, not unlike secret high school codes scrawled into notebooks. Your first task is to sort dyed thread bundles: indigo, cola bark red, burnt orange, and the tricky one, storm grey, which, depending on light, looks like sadness or someone's poorly aged yam. You bundle each colour into coded baskets, trying not to mix up sorrow blue with fertility teal. Your mentor catches one mistake and swaps them with a sigh. Unless you want to start a clan feud, check the shadows before you guess. Later, you help prep a special order, a bridal wrapper meant to express joy, virtue, and just a dash of fertility. But not too much, the weaver mutters. Girl's only 20. You watch as she weaves precise patterns of zigzags and crescents, symbols whose meanings have outlived empires. She taps a small spiral into one corner. That's for luck, she says, or indigestion, depends on who reads it. There's a fringe belief that some weavers were also fortune tellers, that they could read a customer's fate through the colours they instinctively requested. One woman supposedly wove 12 burial shrouds before the rainy season began, and they all ended up used. Coincidence? Maybe. You decide not to ask too many questions. Midday brings a special visitor, a noblewoman ordering mourning cloth for her late husband. She requests a blend of black and dark gold, which the weaver nods at approvingly. Then the woman adds, include 3 broken arrow motifs. Your mentor's eyebrow twitches. That's a not-so-subtle hint the husband died badly. You keep your face neutral and adjust your grip on the shuttle stick. Weaving isn't quick. Each wrapper takes days, sometimes weeks, depending on the complexity. Some designs feature tiny storytelling bands, like silent comics woven in alternating rows. One recent cloth told the tale of a runaway chicken, a scandalous affair, and a clever widow who sold both for profit. It sold out in an hour. You're given your first chance to weave, just a small corner. You press your foot down on the pedal and feed the weft thread with trembling fingers. Your first line is uneven, your second is okay, your third, crooked but proud. The weaver clucks, amused. It looks like a goat fell asleep on it. You beam anyway. By late afternoon, the courtyard smells like warm cotton and smoked dye. You sit in the shade, watching finished wraps being folded and stacked, gifts for ceremonies, payment for debts, offerings for the ancestors. One particularly bold design features a spiraled line ending in a knot. It's rumored to mean, I'm watching you, and I remember what you did last festival. Useful. As the sun begins to fall, the weaver begins work on her personal piece, a long, dark wrap with subtle lines like rainfall. She doesn't explain what it means. Some things, she says, don't need to be spoken aloud. The cloth will speak in time. You gather your things, a few threads still clinging to your wrap, your fingertips stained with dye. You've not just learned to weave, you've learned to say things in fabric, quiet things, honest things, maybe even powerful things. And tonight, as you drift to sleep under the rustle of soft linen and the whisper of loom dreams, you imagine what kind of wrapper you'd wear. Maybe one with stars stitched into the corners and a goat somewhere in the middle, just to keep things humble. The sun is barely peeking over the horizon when you find yourself standing awkwardly, Ardielli beside a man in a leopard skin tunic who's already sweating through his third proverb of the morning. You're not sure if he's the boss or the act, but your new mentor? She's grinning like someone with a secret and a well-practiced punchline. Today, you're shadowing one of the oddest performers in all of oral tradition, a griot's joke double. You thought you'd be storytelling, maybe playing a drum. Instead, your job is to feed jokes, whispers, one-liners, rhythmic asides to a griot, the court's living memory and resident charismatic hurricane. He stands tall, voice booming across the village square, recounting the lineage of a local noble. He's 40 names deep when he leans slightly toward you. You mutter, tell them he once got stuck in his own robe. The griot lets the crowd breathe a second, then slips the line in like melted butter. Sion in his youth, our noble chief, brave enough to wrestle lions, once lost to the wrath of a robe string. The crowd roars. You grin. Welcome to the world of embedded comedy. This isn't just entertainment, it's strategy. A good griot must keep the attention of nobles, elders, children, and tired goat herds simultaneously. Your job? Help him lace history with humor. Truth softened with wit, fact polished with irony. Today, he's relying on your whispers to land every punchline like a seasoned court jester. hidden in plain sight. You begin to understand the rhythm. Not every joke needs to land like a drumbeat. Some just need to flutter by like a sparrow. You slip in a quip about a cousin who married a man with 7 cows but no common sense. He weaves it seamlessly into a story about dowries, nods to you and keeps going. Historians still argue how many griots employed these ghost comics. Some claim it was common in Mali and Songhai courts, while others suggest it was a rare gift reserved for griots so powerful they could afford to hire someone to be funnier than them, quietly. There's a moment mid-performance when the griot pauses and turns toward you again. You whisper, "Tell them the drum knew the secret before the groom." He bellows it to the crowd, tying it into a tale of mismatched weddings and talking animals. You barely hold in your laugh. Sometimes your work is subtle, changing a rhythm, adding a beat, giving a story one last twist. Other times, you're damage control. A toddler yells out that the griot forgot a name. You murmur, "Make the child part of the prophecy." He claps once, points dramatically, and says, "Ah, and even now one among us knows what the river forgets." The child beams, the crowd nods solemnly. Crisis averted. There's a fringe belief among musicians that these joke doubles were precursors to today's hype men, those invisible but essential partners who keep the energy sharp. One old griot reportedly credited his joke double for saving his life during a tense tribal negotiation. "They laughed," he said, "and I lived. By midday, your voice is hoarse. Your griot hasn't missed a beat. You sit under the shade of a fig tree while he performs a eulogy for a chicken with legendary egg-laying talents. You feed him a line about the yoke of destiny. He turns it into a 3-minute poetic monologue that somehow moves 3 women to tears. Later, you're introduced to a few other doubles. One specializes in chicken jokes, another in regional political satire. You learn there's an unspoken code: never upstage your griot. Never steal a laugh meant for him. You are the ember, not the flame. Your final task of the day is to improvise a humorous closing verse for a visiting merchant from the coast. You craft something about long journeys, short donkeys, and the mysterious disappearance of his left sandal. It lands, the merchant bows, the griot slaps your back. That night you sit by the fire, replaying the day's performances in your mind. You're not the face of the story. You're not the name they'll chant later. But you were the wind beneath every punchline, the pause before every laugh. And that is something. You wrap yourself in your shawl, listening as the griot hums nearby. He's still going, telling stories to the moon now, or maybe just himself. You whisper one last joke under your breath, just to see if he catches it. He chuckles softly, doesn't say a word, but you both know you nailed it. This morning you're summoned not with words, but with a basket. It's placed silently outside your mat, heavy with tiny clay pots, dried leaves, and bundles of brownish powder tied with palm string. You know what this means. Today you're venturing into a world far more delicate than math or music. You're about to apprentice in one of the highest pressure ceremonial arts in medieval African society, the realm of the henna negotiator. Yes, henna. But not the relaxing spa day doodles you might be imagining. This isn't about flowers on fingers, this is political patterning. Marriages could hinge on the design of a swirl. Aunties could launch passive-aggressive wars over the inclusion or scandalous omission of a starburst. You are not here to draw, you're here to mediate. You're greeted at the bride's hut by 2 women who haven't made eye contact in 3 days. By now, you've whispered punchlines to griots, tasted suspect millet brews, and hauled sacred stools like a royal UPS. But this morning, you're greeted with a different kind of chaos. A family of 5 women, 2 goats, 1 weeping bride, and 3 completely contradictory opinions about wrist design. You've entered the emotionally charged, henna-stained battlefield of the henna negotiator. You were warned. It's not just about patterns, your contact said. It's diplomacy, it's art, it's survival. And now here you are, sitting cross-legged on a mat, a bowl of crushed henna leaves beside you, facing down an auntie who's already declared that if the bride wears spiral designs, the marriage will spiral too. You offer your warmest, most sleep-deprived smile and begin the ancient ritual of redirecting family tension with compliments. "Your hands," you say to the bride's mother. They look strong, like someone who knows how to choose just the right motif. She narrows her eyes, but her lips twitch. Success. Henna in medieval Africa wasn't just decorative, it was symbolic, sometimes deeply, dangerously so. Certain swirls signaled purity, fertility, or wealth. Others, if misused, could imply rebellion, promiscuity, or worse, support for a rival clan. Historians still argue whether pattern meanings were fixed across regions or manipulated to suit the politics of the day. Some even suggest women intentionally misused symbols to send hidden messages. A spiral could mean joy or revenge. You gently guide the conversation back to the bride. She's 17, quiet and clearly overwhelmed. She wants peacocks, delicate, spiral tails curling up her forearms. Her grandmother snorts. Only if she wants her husband to think she's proud as a rooster. You sigh and reach for the compromise pattern. Crescent vines, elegant, neutral, fertile adjacent but vague enough to avoid family meetings. You sketch it in the dust. The bride's sister nods, the grandmother squints. "As long as you don't put 3 leaves per stem," she mutters. 3 is for funerals. You erase 1 leaf. Crisis averted. You begin mixing the henna, dried leaves, lemon juice, a splash of date syrup for stickiness. It smells earthy, a little sweet. You wrap the paste in cloth and tuck it under a clay bowl to warm. Time is your friend here. While it rests, you continue the delicate dance of emotional diffusion. One cousin wants hidden initials in the design. Another insists on a geometric shield pattern to ward off mother-in-law energy. You take notes, nod meaningfully, and mentally prepare to simplify everything the moment they look away. Your mentor, a woman who once hennaed a diplomat's daughter so skillfully it ended a land dispute, arrives mid-afternoon to check your work. She peers at the draft. "Good spacing," she says. "But remember, symmetry calms the soul. Chaos invites gossip." You adjust the left wrist design. When it's finally time to apply the paste, you steady your hand and begin the quiet, meditative work of dot and curve. The bride barely breathes as the patterns grow across her skin. You move slowly, deliberately, pausing only to brush away fallen henna flecks with a reed fan. Outside, someone starts singing. Inside, time slows to a whisper. There's a fringe belief that a truly balanced henna pattern can influence dream states. Brides wearing it might dream of their future husband's temperament. Some claim symbols can shape personality, that a strong vine design strengthens the spirit, while a weak spiral might weaken the will. Probably nonsense. Still, you make sure the peacock's eye curves upward. As you finish, the family gathers to inspect. There are gasps, a few surprised smiles. Even the grandmother grunts. "Not the worst I've seen." You'll take it. Later, while the bride rests her hands to dry, you sit in the corner, reapplying paste to a design that cracked too early. Your fingertips are stained orange. Your knees ache. But there's peace in the room now. The arguing has faded to soft conversation. The goats have stopped bleating. You've transformed tension into art, anxiety into quiet pride, and maybe, just maybe, you've helped this girl step into her new life with a bit more confidence. 1 vine, 1 dot at a time. As the sky turns dusty rose and the scent of lemon henna rises around you, you finally exhale. Your work speaks without words, and tonight it sings a gentle blessing. You wake up to the kind of wind that doesn't whisper. It whistles. It slips through cracks in the tent like a nosy aunt and rattles the edges of the cookpot like a drummer testing his sticks. The air smells of dry sand and something faintly metallic. "Good," your new mentor says, squinting at the horizon. "Perfect day for calling rain. Today, you're apprenticing as a drought whistle maker. a job that's as confusing as it sounds and possibly more cursed. You follow your mentor through the dunes, each step kicking up tiny clouds. She carries a bundle of carved whistles tied with goat leather.
You carry skepticism. The belief is simple enough. If you carve and blow the right kind of whist,
Teal at the right time, from the right hill, with the right goat tethered nearby, don't ask. The wind will shift, the clouds will listen, and rain will come. Science? Not really. Tradition? Absolutely. Historians still argue whether these rituals were true weather practices, ceremonial superstition, or early forms of acoustic signaling. Some believe the whistles mimicked the calls of birds that flock before storms. Others say the sound was just comforting in the long, dry silence, like someone doing something in a land where waiting could break your spirit. The whistles are made from dried gourds, antelope horns, sometimes old bones. Each one has its own voice. Your mentor hands you a squat little gourd with 3 holes and tells you to coax it. You blow. It sounds like a confused duck. She winces. Not for the storm clouds, dear. That's a wedding sound. You try again. This time it's a mournful, windy note that makes a goat nearby look dramatically emotional. Better. You spend the day learning how to adjust pitch using wax and clay. A lower note might summon the heavy clouds. A high trill might be for dew and mist. There's even a whisper flute carved from hyena bone said to mock the dryness into surrender. You're told never to use it casually. Last time someone tried, the wind flattened 5 cooking fires and knocked over an elder's stool. You climb a dune to practice. The view stretches out in endless tan with threadbare bushes and a horizon that wobbles with heat. You place the whistle to your lips and blow gently. The sound spirals out, strange and thin, immediately swallowed by the wind. Nothing happens, which is fine. You're not expecting rain. Just a moment of connection, a gesture. Your mentor joins you, raising her own whistle, long, slender, painted in white ash. She plays a slow, rising series of notes. The sound is eerie, almost bird-like, almost human. A lull in the wind follows. You hold your breath, then a gust returns. Warm, dry, familiar. That's a no, she says, shrugging. They're not ready. You both sit for a while, watching the clouds not form. You talk about old times, when a girl whistled at sunset and a storm hit that same night. Coincidence? Maybe. You talk about the year 3 whistles cracked in the same week, and the entire village blamed the blacksmith's new apprentice. Justice? Maybe not. There's a fringe theory that these whistles were used to send messages between herders, coded calls for water found, or danger here. Some anthropologists believe the rain calling was secondary, but your mentor insists some whistles, when played by the right person at the right time, do call the clouds, just not always on cue. As evening comes, you help bury a cracked whistle. That's the tradition. If one breaks, it must be buried with a few drops of water and a farewell hum. We thank it for what it tried, she says. You nod, a little more solemn than you expected. Back at camp, the fire is low and the air is cool. You sit by the tent flap, carving your first whistle from a chunk of softened gourd. Your fingers slip, your knife nicks, but eventually you coax a small voice from it, a note that sounds lonely and hopeful at once. You blow it once more before bed, just for yourself, just in case. And though no clouds answer tonight, you feel something shift, not in the sky but in your chest. A kind of lightness, a sense that even small, strange efforts have their place in the world. You curl into your blanket, your new whistle tucked near your head like a charm. The desert hums, the wind laughs, and somewhere in the dark, a goat sneezes dramatically. You smile, maybe tomorrow. The trouble begins before breakfast. You're brushing sleep from your eyes when someone throws open the tent flap and announces she's back from the forest and she's married again. This wouldn't be news, except the she in question is Nikaya, senior wife of a minor chief, undefeated in wrestling, rumoured to have fought off a hyena with a ladle. And today, you're her shadow, her assistant, her towel holder / backup weapon caddy. You've officially stepped into one of the most bewildering combo roles ever recorded. bodyguard-wife combo. It's not just a job, it's a lifestyle. You follow Nikaya through the village. She walks like the ground should feel honored. She carries a curved stick, part staff, part disciplinary device, and she's already deflected 2 unwanted greetings before you reach the central hut. "Too early for flattery," she mutters, then gestures for you to watch the perimeter while she checks on her war paint. You try not to look lost. In medieval African communities where chiefs took multiple wives, not all spouses were ornamental. Some were strategic, alliances forged through strength, reputation, or sheer combat skill. Nikaya, she's the trifecta. She handles internal disputes, patrols at night, and occasionally throws a spear better than half the guards. Historians still argue whether these defensive spouses were common or unique to certain kingdoms. What's clear, no one crosses her, not even the chickens. You help her suit up, leopard spot wrap, armbands, and a hidden knife tucked into her sandal strap. "Today," she says, "we're accompanying the chief to a border negotiation. Smile if you must, but never blink too fast. Looks weak." You nod, mentally adding that to your growing list of survival skills. You ride together on a donkey-drawn cart, flanked by guards and trailed by suspicious silence. Nikaya sips from a calabash filled with something thick and herbal. You don't ask. Instead, she quizzes you. If a rival wife insults you politely, how do you respond? You hesitate. With louder politeness? She grins. Almost, with excellence. That, and perfect posture. The negotiation is tense. 2 neighboring chiefs sit under a canopy, surrounded by witnesses, warriors, and enough palm wine to drown a camel. You stand beside Nikaya, who stands beside your chief. Your job? Intimidate. Subtly. Smile faintly. Project the energy of a woman who could end a man's dynasty with a spoon. Halfway through, one of the rival chiefs makes a snide comment. Nikaya leans slightly toward you. "He just implied our grain storage is as thin as river mist." You whisper, "Should I look offended?" "No," she says, "just sharpen your earring." Later, you're dispatched to check on the guards, and you overhear a whispered plan to test your chief's defenses. You report it. Nikaya nods once, then shifts her body ever so slightly to block the chief's exposed side. She doesn't even pause her small talk. There's a fringe theory that these wife bodyguards were selected young and trained in silence, disguise, and crisis management. Some say they were part of a shadow sisterhood, women raised to protect power through proximity. Others insist they were simply the natural result of making marriage political. Either way, your calf muscles are now sore from trying to stand with both elegance and readiness. Back at camp, Nikaya lets her guard drop slightly. She peels off her spotted wrap, sits by the fire, and sighs the sigh of someone who's diffused 5 feuds before lunch. "Being the strong one," she murmurs, "means never tripping in public." She offers you a bite of roasted yam and adds, "But if you must trip, land like it was part of the plan." You help her untie the knife from her ankle. She lets you polish her staff. It's curved with nicks and burn marks, each one a silent tale. "Remember," she says, "I don't do this because I love violence. I do this because some people understand nothing else." You ask if she's tired. She grins. "I stay tired. That's how I know I'm useful." As night falls, she stretches out on a straw mat, arms crossed behind her head, staring at the stars like she suspects them of treason. You sit nearby, running your thumb along the blade you've now cleaned twice. Your eyes scan the dark. Every movement could be something, or nothing, but you stay alert. Just like she taught you, you may not be as fast, or as fearless, or as skilled with an elbow jab, but you are learning, and under her watch, you feel strangely safe, empowered, ready. The night passes in low torchlight and long shadows, and when sleep finally comes, it feels earned. You wake up to a sharp nudge and a whisper that smells like goat's milk and tension. A birth has started, she's breech, and the sands are rising. You barely get your sandals on before you're swept into a flurry of cloth, whispered prayers, and the rhythmic jingling of ankle beads. Today you're apprenticing in one of the desert's most demanding roles, sand dune midwife. And as you jog beside the camel cart bouncing toward the birthing tent, you quickly realize this is not your typical delivery room. The birthing site is not a hut or a clinic or even a particularly solid patch of land. It's a low tent perched on the edge of a restless dune, its sides flapping like gossiping tongues. Inside, it's stifling, hot, cramped, buzzing with flies and anxiety. The pregnant woman, Mariam, lies on a thick mat, gripping a strap suspended from the ceiling, like it's the only thing tethering her to this world. Her face is calm, too calm. It's the kind of calm that knows exactly how bad things can get. Your mentor is already at work, sleeves rolled, eyes sharp, hands calloused and steady. She motions for you to fetch the herbal compresses warming by the fire. You kneel, avoiding the loose sand that's somehow inside everything, and hand her the first cloth, soaked in baobab root and crushed mint. "Talk to her," she murmurs. "Not about the pain, about after." You kneel beside Mariam, unsure where to begin. You mention her husband's clumsy goat, her sister's upcoming wedding, the new water pot she bartered for, anything to make her focus on life, not pressure. She groans. The mentor leans closer to examine. "She's breech," she confirms, "but we have time."
"Maybe," she says
the last part quietly, like she's negotiating with the wind. Historians still debate the extent of medical training among nomadic midwives. Some argue their techniques were inherited orally, passed down like lullabies. Others suggest a robust network of knowledge sharing, hidden books, coded cloth, or even desert gatherings under moonlight. Whatever the truth, your mentor knows more about birth than some city doctors. And she doesn't need a scalpel, just hands, herbs, and terrifying focus. You help adjust Mariam's position. One woman presses her lower back, another massages her thighs with palm oil. A whisper starts, soft and low. It's not a prayer exactly, more of a memory hymn. You pick up the rhythm. Your mentor wraps a cloth around Mariam's belly, pulls gently, and begins the slow, almost invisible process of shifting the child from the outside in. It's not fast, it's not glamorous, but inch by inch, the angle changes, the tent holds its breath. Outside, the wind starts throwing sand at the canvas, angry that you dared ignore it. A younger cousin clutches the tent pole. "It's rising fast," she says. You look at your mentor. She doesn't flinch. Then we move faster. You fetch the water, wipe the sweat, replace a cloth, hum louder. Mariam clenches her teeth. The baby turns. And just like that, suddenly, perfectly, impossibly, he's here. A cry, first soft, then stronger, then furious. The wind howls as if jealous. Your mentor doesn't celebrate, not yet. She checks the cord, clears the airways, wraps the child tight, and only then nods. "He's hungry, that's a good sign." Mariam smiles barely, but it's the kind of smile that's earned. You clean the mat while your hands shake. One of the elder women hands you a date and a cup of goat milk. "First breech?" she asks. You nod. She cackles. "That's the worst kind of first. Good luck sleeping now." There's a fringe belief among desert clans that sand-born midwives are protected by wind spirits, that the dunes remember their names and soften when they pass. Some say their footprints vanish faster, others claim their children never get lost in storms. It's all very poetic, until you realize your nose is bleeding from dry air and someone just mistook your cloak for a placenta towel. Still, you did something real today. As the tent is packed and the family prepares to move again, you help fold the birthing mat and seal the leftover herbs in clay pots. Mariam kisses your hand. You freeze, unsure what to do, then gently squeeze her fingers. Her baby is already asleep, tucked against her chest like a tiny, angry miracle. That night, you lie beneath a half-collapsed windbreak, your face crusted with dust, your arms sore, your heart full. There are easier jobs, cleaner ones, safer ones, but none quite like this. The air is thick with the sweet tang of fermentation. Not the kind that makes your nose wrinkle, but the kind that floats lazily on a breeze, mingling with laughter, gossip, and the sharp sound of a palm wine calabash being set down just a little too hard. Today your job isn't to drink or serve. Today you are apprenticing in something far trickier, palm wine memory keeper. It sounds whimsical, it isn't. You're not just collecting stories, you're recording them in the one place where history, scandal, and tradition all spill out together, the drinking circle. Your mentor is already seated among them, a tall, soft-spoken woman with laugh lines carved deep from years of smiling at secrets. She sips from a shallow gourd, nods along to a story, then leans toward you. "Listen closely," she whispers. The truth always slurs around the second cup. Your toolkit is simple. A carved staff, not for walking, for presence, a woven mat, and a memory sharp enough to slice a yam. You're to observe, remember, and retell the tales from tonight's gathering without exaggeration, or at least not more exaggeration than the original speaker used. Tricky, that. The gathering begins slowly. Traders arrive first, still dusty from the road, pulling off boots and rubbing their calves. Then a few elders, then the young ones with more energy than tact. Everyone's seated in a circle under a mango tree whose shade feels blessed. You sit cross-legged beside your mentor, just behind the main talkers, close enough to hear, invisible enough to not become a story yourself. The palm wine flows, it's cloudy, tart, alive. You've been told never to drink on the job. Sip only if you're spoken to directly, your mentor said, and even then, just enough to not seem rude. The stories begin. A merchant boasting about dodging river bandits, an auntie teasing a local boy about his failed courtship, a quiet man murmuring a tale about a fish that refused to die. You listen to each voice, noting tone, detail, laughter triggers. Your mind, like a scroll, records it all. There's a fringe theory that these memory keepers were precursors to West Africa's griots, that they formed the informal, emotional memory of the village while griots handled the formal genealogies. Some scholars believe they served as a check against power, remembering what was promised, what was done, and what was conveniently forgotten. You're beginning to see why. By the second round, stories grow looser, names slip out, eyes dart around. A woman leans in to confess that she saw the chief's nephew painting his face with stolen charcoal and dancing like a spirit behind the shrine. Everyone laughs, except the chief's nephew, who clears his throat loudly. Your mentor leans toward you. "Did you catch the timing?" she asks. You nod. Yes, this story followed the third sip, after the young man spilled wine on his robe. It's about pride, mischief, and a bit of revenge. It'll go in the mischief log, you're told, one of the informal mental drawers where memory keepers sort their stories. You try categorizing them: boast, confession, warning, joke, lesson. But some don't fit. One woman, soft-voiced and staring into her cup, talks about the child she lost. No punchline. Just silence and a slow refill. Your mentor doesn't write it down, but later, as the crowd thins and the wine jars empty, she hums a tune. It's low and circular. She hums it again. You realize it's a memory hook, a musical knot tied around that quiet grief, so it's never lost, even without words. You hum it too. That's how it's passed on. Historians debate whether memory keepers embellished or cleaned up stories. Some say they trimmed the scandal, others that they added spice. Your mentor? She says, memory's a basket, not everything fits, but what does stay must be carried carefully. As night deepens, the fire crackles low, and a few stubborn guests try to start new stories with slurred enthusiasm. Your mentor rises. Enough, she says gently, collecting her staff. You do the same. On the walk back, she quizzes you, not just on the facts, but on tone, tension, what wasn't said. She asks what stories were told with a smirk, which with clenched fists, and which were spoken just to fill the silence. You pass most of her questions. A few you miss. That's all right, she says. The forgetting is as important as the remembering. Before bed, you recite one story aloud, just one, from earlier that evening. You get the order right, the details close, and the pacing decent. She nods. Then she quietly corrects a single word. He didn't find the ring in the river. He said it returned. Small difference, big meaning. You sleep with your head full of voices, laughter, wine, and secrets. Your dreams swirl with mango leaves and half-remembered songs. Somewhere in your sleep, you mutter a line about the fish who wouldn't die and smile when it finally swims away. You wake to the sound of wet slapping and someone shouting, "He's counting with his eyes again," which is, alarmingly, not the strangest part of your morning, because today you're wading, literally, into the murky world of a job equal parts daring, damp, and deeply unnecessary for anyone with common sense. Welcome to your next assignment, Crocodile Farm Accountant. No, it's not a metaphor. And yes, those are actual crocodiles. You've been invited, or roped in really, to assist a woman named Barrow, who runs a riverside crocodile sanctuary / trading post / mildly cursed bookkeeping operation. She greets you barefoot, her skirt hitched above her knees, one hand holding a chalk-smeared board, the other pointing toward a pen full of blinking, scaly creatures. "We're behind on inventory," she says, "and someone's been mislabeling the young ones." You don't know what's worse, that the crocodiles might be underreported, or that someone is stealing crocodiles and hoping no one notices. You are handed a ledger made from stiffened reed paper and a stick of charcoal. Your job, confirm the numbers, track the hatchlings, record feed logs, avoid becoming feed. You start with the juveniles, supposedly the friendly ones. Barrow hands you a long bamboo pole. "Not for defense," she says, "for measuring distance between you and their teeth." You crouch beside the first pen, count 6 tiny snouts, then do it again after one disappears beneath the mud. Is it hiding or waiting? You mark it down as 6 with 1 submerged, probable. There's a mainstream theory that Nileside communities treated crocodiles with both reverence and practicality. In some regions they were farmed carefully for their hides and symbolism, in others fed and protected as spiritual guardians. The job of crocodile keeper was not uncommon, but combining it with detailed accounting, that, historians still argue, might be unique to this muddy, madness-adjacent outpost. You shadow Barrow as she moves confidently among the enclosures. She whistles, clicks her tongue, and throws fish heads with casual precision. Some crocs blink slowly at her, others snap their jaws just to remind everyone who really owns the river. "You need to know each by scar," she says, pointing. "Ting to a particularly grumpy male with a missing toe." That's Raz. Hasn't eaten in 3 days. Could be fasting, could be planning something. You nod and draw a small triangle next to his name in the ledger. You have no idea why. Inventory continues, fish stock checked, meat portions weighed, sunning schedules observed. Yes, sunning schedules. Barrow insists certain crocs prefer certain rocks and that upsetting this balance causes fights, mating displays, or dramatic sulking. You document it all. There's a fringe belief that crocodile keepers could read river moods through the behavior of their reptiles. That crocs restless at dusk meant floods. That a croc facing north was a sign of betrayal. That one who refused food was mourning a death. Superstition? Maybe. But when 3 of them suddenly dive under at once and stay motionless, Barrow narrows her eyes. Someone's coming. 10 minutes later, a trader from downriver arrives requesting 2 hides and a hatchling. "Only if the numbers match," Barrow says, turning to you. You freeze. This is your moment. You flip the page, read aloud the log, and confirm no hatchlings missing. For once. The trader nods, is handed the goods, and tosses you a banana for your efforts. You consider asking for something more impressive, like, say, shoes, but settle for the potassium. Lunch is brief. Smoked fish, maize, and a story from Barrow about the time she raised a croc named Inkosi, who followed her around like a dog until it tried to eat a guest and had to be gently relocated. "Still sends me dreams," she says, chewing. Later, you're tasked with updating the death and disappearance log. It's short but grim. Cause of disappearance? You ask on one entry. Barrow shrugs. Gate left open, one-legged chicken. You do the math. Historians suggest these accounting records, sometimes scratched into wood, sometimes stored in bundles of cloth tags, served as economic tools and proof of tribute. A well-run croc farm could support dozens of trades: leather, meat, bones, even ceremonial offerings. But keeping the numbers honest, that took someone like Barrow. Or now, maybe you. Evening settles in, turning the river gold. The crocs stretch on the banks like sun-soaked logs, the kind that would happily chase you if you tripped. Barrow hands you the final task, naming a newly born hatchling. He'll need a tag. And a story. You think, then write, Tano, the fifth one who didn't bite me. Barrow chuckles. Bold, let's see if he lives up to it. You file your ledger, rinse your hands in the river, cautiously, and make a mental note to check your dreams for hissing tonight. You've counted crocodiles and survived, and in this job, that's enough to call it a win. You fall asleep to the lullaby of water-slapping reeds, crickets chirping, and one long, slow splash that definitely wasn't wind. You wake to a knock on a carved wooden door, polished, gilded, and much fancier than any you've seen in recent memory. A young attendant in a gold-trimmed robe whispers, "The bride won't enter without her bangles verified," which sounds like a minor issue until you remember that in this particular kingdom, ivory bangles are less fashion statement and more political declaration. Today you are apprenticing in the world of the ivory bangle appraiser, a specialist in aesthetics, authenticity, and silent judgment. Your mentor greets you with a nod and an exhale, as though she already knows how dramatic the day will be. She's seated behind a low table, scattered with bangles of various shades, pure white, creamy yellow, and one suspiciously greyish one that might be carved soap. She's marrying into the merchant caste, your mentor explains. Expect counterfeits and at least one passive-aggressive gift. You're handed a soft cloth, a polishing stone, and a thin metal pick. Step 1, the sniff test. Ivory has a distinct scent when warmed by the hand. Not sweet, not sour. Somewhere between aged parchment and dusty shells. You rub the first bangle gently between your palms. It smells right. You nod. Step 2, the tap test. Authentic ivory sings softly when tapped with a bone stylus. Fakes either thud, click too sharply, or, in one memorable case, explode into powder. You try it. A pleasing thrum, approved. Each bangle is examined for subtle details, grain lines, carved inscriptions, and weight. One is far too light. Your mentor holds it up to the light, squints and mutters, "This was made from river shell paste. Lovely, but a lie." Historians still argue how widespread ivory use was among women in various African kingdoms. Some believe bangles were used primarily for trade. Others argue they were cultural markers, symbolizing status, marriage eligibility, or wealth that traveled with the wrist. What's certain is this: getting caught with a fake bangle at a royal wedding was social death. Your job, then, is to make sure no bride accidentally insults a dowager aunt with plastic. You keep polishing, tapping, and weighing. The bride arrives, flanked by sisters, cousins, and one overexcited uncle who loudly declares, "We brought 13! One for each moon she didn't elope." Everyone laughs. Your mentor doesn't. She picks up a particularly chunky bangle with odd carvings. "This," she says, "was made for someone with larger ambitions." Translation: it's either stolen or meant to make a scene. She hands it to you. Appraise, carefully. You examine it. It's real ivory, but mismatched in design. The motif doesn't match any known family pattern. You tap it. It sings. Then pause. Inside the carved edge is a tiny symbol, not the bride's lineage. You point it out. Your mentor smiles. Sharp eyes. That's from the coastal houses. And this bride, she's inland. Returning it politely is now your job. You cross the courtyard, where the bride is being fussed over. You kneel, hold the bangle in your palm, and say with your best smile, "This one must have travelled a great distance, perhaps too far to speak your story clearly." She blinks, then nods. Message received. The bangle is quietly slipped back into a pouch. The uncle looks mildly offended. There's a fringe belief that certain ivory bangles were memory-locked, blessed by priests to hold emotional energy from the wearer. One scholar insists that wearing another woman's ceremonial bangle without cleansing it first led to marital misfortune. Another says it's just the result of poor hygiene. Either way, you're careful not to wear any of them for fun. Later, you're asked to prep the final display. 12 bangles, arranged in ascending weight, each inscribed with a subtle story. Courtship, betrothal, dowry, vows, and the rest. Well, they're blank. Space for the bride to live into them. Your mentor whispers, "We don't just verify, we protect the story." The wedding begins as drums echo across the plaza and dancers swirl in blue and white. The bride walks forward slowly, wrists glittering with history. Each step she takes is met with silence, awe, and the quiet scrutiny of every elder present. She holds her arms aloft once, just enough to flash the bangles. No counterfeit, no scandal, no cracks. You watch from the shadows, cloth in hand, still wiping fingerprints from the final unused piece. Not every bangle was meant to be worn. Some are simply meant to wait. That night, you sit under a jacaranda tree, the scent of flowers clinging to your sleeves. You roll a practice bangle in your hand, trying to guess its story from its shape, its weight, its tone. You won't remember every wedding, but this one will hum in your memory, quiet and perfect. The sun is already high by the time you arrive at the outer grove, where bees hum like overworked musicians and the air smells like warm honey stirred with dust. You're late, but no one says so aloud. Your mentor simply hands you a woven sash and a gourd of water and says, "Don't swat, don't scream, and for the love of the ancestors, don't dance off beat. Today you're joining the bee charm dancer, a woman whose job isn't to fight bees, but to soothe them, with movement, rhythm, and a kind of hypnotic elegance that neither textbooks nor common sense can explain. The hives are suspended in trees, thick cylinders made of bark and rope, some stained with years of wax, others freshly placed. Your mentor begins swaying immediately, arms loose, ankles jingling with tiny copper bells. She hums something soft and circular, not a song exactly, more of a pulse. You mimic her steps if clumsily. The bees swirl, but they don't strike. Not yet. "Bees smell fear," she says, adjusting your elbow. "They also smell overconfidence. And garlic. Did you eat garlic?" You blink. She sighs. "Great. Stay downwind." Historians still debate whether bee charmers were performers, shamans, or just unusually brave apiarists. Some oral traditions claim they could summon bees with dance alone, no smoke required. Others insist the dance was more for humans, to prove harmony with the hive and calm the crowd during harvest. Either way, it's working. One of the elder harvesters climbs a tree slowly, balanced precariously on a notched branch. You and your mentor keep dancing, small circles now, knees bending, bells chiming in sync with the breeze. The bees buzz louder, the man reaches for the hive. You shift to the second rhythm, a slightly faster pace with heel taps and shoulder rolls. The bees falter mid-flight. A few land on your arm. You don't flinch. Your sweat smells like honey and terror. Your mentor beams. "This is the patience beat," she whispers. "It tells them we're not thieves, just guests." The harvester lowers a smoking bundle, just a puff, not enough to panic them. The hive is opened carefully. Honeycomb, thick and golden, glistens in the sun. The bees swarm lazily now, more curious than furious. Some land on your sash. One perches on your forehead. You nod at it like a respected uncle. It leaves without insult. There's a fringe theory that dancers were sometimes stung deliberately, one sting per season, to connect them to the hive mind. Your mentor neither confirms nor denies this. She just says, "One sting keeps the rhythm humble. You dance for hours." The music changes slightly, depending on the mood of the hive, the sharpness of the wind, or how many spectators are watching. A boy claps too loudly. He's shushed. A woman whispers a blessing. Your mentor nods once. The harvest is going well. As comb after comb is collected, cut, cradled in leaf wraps passed hand to hand, you continue the dance. You don't stop, even when your legs ache or a bee lands in your hair. The rhythm holds, the bees hover, the harmony stands. Then, suddenly, a shout. One harvester slips. Bees stir like rising smoke. You freeze. Your mentor steps forward, raises her arms, and begins the emergency beat. Faster, sharper, almost a stomp. You match her, heart racing. It's less about grace now, more about power, reassurance. We're here. We're calm. You're safe. The bees settle. The man regains his grip. Everyone exhales. Afterward, you sit on a rock, sipping honey water and watching the combs get portioned out. Some for the elders, some for the traders. One small sliver pressed into your palm, your first bee-earned blessing. You moved well, your mentor says. Like someone who listens more than they fear. You smile, cheeks sticky, ankles sore. You ask how she first learned the dance. She shrugs. My mother taught me. But the bees, well, they do most of the teaching. That night, back in your tent, you dream of wings, of wind and wax, of bells on your ankles and bees on your shoulders, whispering secrets in the universal hum of the hive. You don't remember what they said, but when you wake, your feet are still tapping. The sun has barely cleared the horizon when you hear your name called in, a tone halfway between concern and suspicion. You step out of your tent expecting maybe an urgent errand or another mild goat emergency. Instead, a wiry old woman with a walking stick and a necklace of tiny gourds points directly at you and says, "You talk to goats, right?" This is how your morning begins as a ghost-whispering goat herder. You laugh, thinking it's a joke. It is not. The village elder, Nana Suma, who allegedly once argued a thunderstorm into changing course, tells you that you've been selected to accompany her on a 3-day goat run through a haunted trail. The goats are fine, she explains. It's the ghosts that get nosy. Your job, she says, is to keep the animals calm, carry the water gourd, and, most importantly, respond if any ancestral spirits ask for directions. You do not question this. The goats, 7 of them, all with alarming levels of personality, are already packed and ready. Blankets tied, bells polished. One named Kofi keeps trying to eat his own tether. Ignore him, Nana Suma says. He sees too much. You set off at sunrise, following the path toward the eastern hills, where the wind grows colder even though the sun stays hot. You're told not to whistle. Might summon the wrong listener. Also, no singing without permission, and if you feel a chill while standing in direct sunlight, definitely don't mention it aloud. Historians still debate the nature of ghost-herding roles. Some say they were metaphorical, referring to elders who guarded collective memory. Others argue these herders walked literal paths known for spirit encounters. The goats, they believe, were used as spiritual barometers, more attuned to presence than people. A goat that bolts? Spirit nearby. The first half-day is uneventful. You walk, you hum, you name 2 new rocks. The goats munch grass and pretend not to judge you. Then just past a split tree, shaped like a crooked smile, the wind changes. The lead goat Adwoa stops, her ears flick. Nana Suma raises her walking stick. They're listening, she says. You are told to sit. The goats form a loose semicircle, and Nana begins speaking, not to you, but to the air. She greets the ancestors, acknowledges their watchfulness, thanks them for letting the village harvest mangoes last season. She mentions the road, the goats, your presence. Then she gestures to you. Your throat dries up. You were not warned there would be public speaking to spirits. You mutter a greeting, offer thanks. You promise not to let the goats destroy any sacred shrubs. You finish with a respectful bow. A soft breeze passes over your face. A leaf spins in a perfect circle. Nana Suma nods. They're satisfied. That night, you set up camp near an ancient baobab said to hold memory echoes. You listen to the goats snore, yes, some of them snore, while Nana quietly crushes herbs over a tiny fire. Spirits like stories, she says, but they love honesty more. She tells you how, years ago, she lost a goat during one of these trips. The next night, the goat returned, alone, wearing a braided necklace made of river reeds and ash. No one claimed it. She still doesn't know what it meant. There's a fringe belief that ghosts leave marks of favour on those who treat their land well. Some say a spirit might bless your dreams, others warn of nightmares disguised as blessings. Either way, Nana says, you wake up changed. Day 2 is stranger. Kofi refuses to walk unless sung to. Adwa refuses to stop unless you sing. You invent a song on the spot about mango pits and goat glory. It works, sort of. Near noon, you pass a rock carved with symbols you don't recognize. Nana stops, tells you to light incense, not for purification, but as a politeness offering. You wave smoke toward the rock and whisper thanks. The goats bleat in eerie unison. That night you dream of walking through fog, holding a lead rope that stretches far ahead. But when you reach the end, it's tied to nothing. You wake to find Kofi licking your foot and looking far too pleased. On the final day, the trail turns quiet. The goats stop once more before a narrow ravine. You feel that same sunlit chill. You pause, then softly you speak. We're just passing through, respectfully. The wind dies down, the goats move forward. You return to the village at dusk, dust-covered and aching. The villagers greet Nana with claps and quiet bows. When they see you still trailing 7 whole goats, they nod approvingly. One boy whispers, "He came back with all of them," as if that wasn't expected. Later, Nana hands you a pouch of salt, a carved amulet, and a gourd of fermented honey drink. "You're not quite a whisperer," she says. But the spirits didn't frown. That's something. You sleep hard that night. No dreams, no wind, just peace. And Kofi, curled up by your feet, snoring like someone who's seen both the living and the dead, and prefers the former. The morning is unusually quiet. No goats, no drums, just the rhythmic sweep of brooms over the courtyard and the occasional squawk of a rooster who clearly has opinions about breakfast service. You stretch, roll your shoulders, and wander into the shaded center of the compound, only to find yourself face to face with a woman draped in white silk, seated beneath a parasol, filing her nails with a piece of shell. "You're late," she says, though you didn't know you were expected. She pats the cushion beside her. "Sit. We have estate matters to visualize." You blink. She smiles, and just like that, you've stepped into one of the most peculiar and quietly powerful positions in the social fabric of medieval merchant families, anticipated widow-in-waiting. This sounds scandalous. It isn't, well, not entirely. The woman beside you is called Lady Tamar. She's the third wife of an elderly merchant, one who owns half the rice fields, a third of the riverboats, and all the stubborn silence in the northern court. He's in his 70s, she's in her early 40s, and no one's pretending this marriage is about romantic, candlelit dinners. This is about succession, security, and, in Tamar's words, the art of staying ready. Your role, she explains, is to assist in the careful, delicate preparations that one makes when one's husband may pass any year now, though he's been about to pass since 2 rainy seasons ago. You follow her into a shaded room where she keeps what she calls her pre-grief drawer. Inside are silk wraps in deep indigo, legal documents written on bark scrolls, incense bundles for morning rituals, and, this is real, a handmade list titled, "Who I Will Not Let Cry Louder Than Me." She looks at you. Everyone talks about what widows wear. No one talks about what they plan. Historians still debate whether these widow-in-waiting roles were formalized. Some argue that they emerged out of necessity, wives preparing for the legal and emotional consequences of outliving men with tangled estates. Others believe it was an informal status, quietly acknowledged by elder women as a form of social rehearsal. Either way, you're in it now. Your first task? Inventory. Not of possessions, of emotional leverage. Lady Tamar dictates while you write. Cousin Alima will try to claim the spice pots. Remind her I know about her borrowed head wraps. His second wife will ask for the East Garden. Redirect her with fish pie. Tell the scribes I want the eulogy brief. No proverbs older than I am. You ask if she feels odd preparing for a death that hasn't happened. She shrugs. If men can draft wills at 40, women can draft reactions at 42. There's a fringe belief among elders that how a widow handles her first 7 days of mourning determines the next 7 years of her life. Too loud, you're seen as dramatic. Too quiet, suspicious. Too stylish, already looking. Lady Tamar plans to cry once, loudly, then switch to poetic silence. Let them guess what I'm thinking, she says. You accompany her to the seamstress, where she's ordering mourning wraps pre-stitched with hidden messages, threads of silver woven only visible in firelight.
This one says, I was
Warned him about the honey seller. You raise an eyebrow. She winks. At lunch, you help her portion out condolence tokens for people who haven't even offered condolences yet. Preemptive generosity, she says. They'll feel too guilty to argue about property later. The tokens include hand-carved beads, small sachets of dried ginger, and, strangely, 3 sandals with mismatched straps. Those are for people who always arrive uninvited, she explains. Let them trip on the way in. The merchant himself? He naps peacefully under a silk canopy, completely unaware, or perhaps pretending to be unaware, of the slow, meticulous inheritance choreography unfolding around him. Lady Tamar sends him mango slices. You send him a polite nod. He burps once and goes back to sleep. That night, Lady Tamar reviews her final list of survival statements. Things she'll say when people pretend to be sadder than they are. He was kind when time allowed. We shared many administrative moments. He loved deeply, mostly his ledgers. You copy them down, practicing the right balance of solemnity and sarcasm. She tests your tone. Try it again, this time with a touch more regret, less relief. Before bed, she lights a slow-burning incense stick. Death isn't a surprise, she murmurs. It's a guest we host in advance. Then she hands you a new sash. Black with silver, for rehearsal only. Never wear it at dinner. You lie down that night with your brain humming, not from fear or grief, but strategy. You never expected widowhood to be planned like a harvest, plotted like a festival, managed like a palace kitchen. But Lady Tamar, she's ready, she's patient. And when the time comes, her tears will fall exactly as rehearsed, balanced, convincing, and utterly devastating to her rivals. You drift off wondering whether you're more afraid of the merchant's death or how impressively she'll manage his afterlife. The morning air is thick with the smell of charcoal and wet clay, and as you step into the central clearing of the village, you're immediately handed a gourd of ochre pigment and told to smudge with confidence, not creativity. Today's assignment is less about flair, more about function. You're now apprenticing as a rain ceremony face painter, a surprisingly technical role in a ritual world where one poorly drawn spiral could offend both sky and spectator. Your mentor, a woman named Ai, is already kneeling beside a line of young warriors, her fingers stained red, yellow, and soot black. She doesn't speak much, just nods, gestures, occasionally mutters critiques like, "That line says confusion, not courage," as she wipes a cheek clean and starts over. The rain ceremony is no small affair. It's been dry for weeks, the elders are nervous, the goats are louder than usual, and today the entire village will march to the edge of the sacred grove to plead, pray, and parade for rain. Every face must say something: hope, strength, humility. Please don't let my millets die. That's where you come in. Your first canvas is a wiry teenager who keeps twitching his nose. Don't sneeze, you beg, tracing a swoop across his forehead. He sneezes. You start again. Face painting here isn't just decoration, it's language. Each mark has a meaning: vertical stripes for seeking, dots under the eyes for truth, spirals on the chin for renewal. Historians still argue how standardized these symbols were. Some say they were clan-specific, Others suggest a loose system passed between ritual groups like whispered recipes. I teaches you the rhythm, forehead first, that's the request, cheeks next, that's the offering, chin last, the commitment. You mess up the order once and the warrior ends up with a face that says, regretful tax collector. I sighs and starts over. There's a fringe belief that if the first painted warrior in the rain procession receives a droplet before the others, his face pattern must be preserved and reused every season, regardless of what it means. One year, this resulted in everyone painting themselves with the symbol for surprise goat birth. It rained, though. As you work, you begin to notice subtleties, the way red ochre is warmed in the sun for better consistency, how charcoal must be sifted through fine mesh to avoid lumps, how a single, misplaced thumbprint on a cheek can be read as romantic intent. You make that mistake once. The warrior blushes. You pretend you were testing symmetry. Midday brings the arrival of the elders. Their faces, unlike the warriors, are painted in cool tones, ashes, grey clay, faded blue. Their message is different: remembrance, patience, stubbornness. One of them, old as the hills and twice as wrinkled, asks you to paint the symbol for quiet strength. You freeze. You don't know it. I steps in, draws a soft triangle above each brow, then says, "There, now he looks like he's already forgiven the clouds." By late afternoon, everyone is ready. The procession begins. Drums pulse, ankles jingle. Children wave fans made of woven grass. You walk with I near the front, your hands still sticky with pigment, your mind buzzing with symbols. The grove ahead is hushed, dark trees, tangled roots, and a soft breeze that feels almost promising. Everyone forms a circle. Elders chant, warriors kneel. I steps forward with a pot of water drawn from the deepest, coldest well. It's poured slowly over a sacred stone. The crowd watches, listens. Nothing. Then almost nothing. A single drop. It lands on a boy's arm. He gasps. People crane their necks. Then nothing again. But hope? It lingers. You return that evening exhausted. Your arms ache. Your eyes are stained with specks of ochre. But your heart feels full, like you helped write a prayer across 100 faces and sent it skyward. Later, as you wipe your tools clean, I hands you a fragment of broken clay, a piece of a bowl used in the ceremony years ago. "We keep the old pieces," she says. "They remind us that rain isn't owed, it's earned." You nod, step outside, lift your face to the sky. The clouds are quiet tonight, but your fingers still smell like hope. The sun is high and smug when you're handed a basket of sweetgrass, a pouch of dried cola nuts, and an envelope sealed with beeswax. "Walk fast," the elder says, "but not too fast. She'll think you're nervous. Today, your role is neither glamorous nor particularly safe. You are officially the messenger between wives, the diplomatic postmaster in a household with multiple spouses, twice the tension, and 3 times the coded language. Your first delivery is simple enough: a small bundle of cassava flour and a folded cloth scented with lemongrass. It's from wife number 2 to wife number 4. The stated purpose is to share the new flour. The real purpose? You'll find out soon enough. You enter wife 4's courtyard. She's stirring a pot and pretending not to see you. You clear your throat. She gestures vaguely. You set down the bundle, bow slightly, and prepare to exit. But she stops you. "She sent lemongrass?" You nod. "And no ginger?" You blink. She nods grimly. Message received. Historians still debate how structured communication between wives was in polygamous households. Some argue it followed strict etiquette, with pre-approved phrases and symbols. Others suggest it was total chaos wrapped in silk and sarcasm. From where you're standing between 2 courtyards and a brewing argument, it feels like both. You retreat to the shade, only to be immediately summoned by wife number 1, matriarch of the house, queen of indirect commentary, and mistress of the eyebrow raise. She hands you a folded note. "Deliver this to number 3, no peeking." The note is sealed, but lightly. As you walk, the scent of crushed cloves escapes the edges. You deliver it. Wife 3 opens it slowly, reads in silence, then laughs. Once. Not amused. More like a laugh sharpened on a whetstone. Tell her, she says. If she's still upset about the cow, she should just say so. You do not ask about the cow. You begin to understand the rhythm of this job. Every delivery is a performance. The way you bow, how you hold the message, what time of day you arrive, it all says something. Some messages are wrapped in plain fabric, others in bright colours to hide their tone. A message wrapped in blue might mean peace offering. Wrapped in yellow? Possibly. I remember your betrayal from harvest season. There's a fringe belief that messengers like you were trained in emotional neutrality, that they were taught to never react, no matter how spicy the message, how public the insult, or how many wives were waiting just outside the tent to see if your face twitched. You now believe that completely. Later, you're summoned by Wife 5, young, newlywed, and absolutely done with everyone's opinions. I'm sending this to all of them, she says, handing you a small bottle of perfume and a comb. No note. Just those two things. You walk carefully, distributing the message one courtyard at a time. Wife. One eyes the perfume and sniffs. Clever. Wife 3 huffs and mutters something about children playing at symbolism. Wife 4 just chuckles. Finally, someone fun. By evening, you've delivered 8 items, 3 bundles, 2 whispered replies, and 1 ominously silent look that you're still trying to interpret. The day ends with a final task, returning the sweetgrass basket, but now it contains a small pouch of turmeric and a single sunflower petal. You ask what it means. Your mentor shrugs. Depends on who receives it. You walk back through the compound, the air now cooler, the shadows longer. The wives sit in their own spaces, all pretending to focus on something else, while clearly tracking each other's movements like cats circling a single bowl. No one speaks. But they all know. You've seen the entire emotional weather system of a polygamous household in one day. Storm clouds, heat, dust devils of else of sarcasm, and the rare breeze of affection. And through it all, you didn't drop a single item, spill a single word, or, crucially, roll your eyes. That alone makes you legendary. As the stars rise and the drums begin in the distant fields, you lie back on your mat, muscles tired, but your mind alive with unspoken sentences. Tomorrow? More messages, but tonight? You rest. And maybe dream of a household with just one wife. You're woken before dawn by someone sneezing outside your tent, loud, sudden, and oddly theatrical. You roll over, groan, and try to ignore it. But then comes the second sneeze, short, sharp, and followed by a chorus of hushed murmurs. You sit up, blink, and whisper to yourself, "Oh no, not this job." But yes. Today you're apprenticing as a sneeze interpreter. You step into the courtyard, where the elders are already seated in a semicircle, staring at the horizon like it owes them money. A pot of tea steams quietly in the centre. Your mentor, an elderly woman with a nose like an eagle's and the calm of someone who's heard every possible sneeze, gestures you over. "We're at 5 already," she says without looking at you. 3 northbound, 2 downward, 1 partial snort. Market day's going to be messy. You do not laugh. That would be deeply inappropriate. In this role, every sneeze matters, not the health-related kind. No one here is tracking pollen counts. No, these sneezes are omens, warnings, commentary from the universe disguised as nasal spasms. Some communities across medieval West Africa believed that sneezes, particularly in ceremonial spaces or at decision-making gatherings, carried meaning based on direction, volume, and timing. Historians still debate whether sneeze interpretation was serious divination or just high-stakes superstition. But judging by the intensity in the courtyard and the 7 people holding their breath like their futures depend on it, it's serious enough. Your first lesson, direction. If someone sneezes while facing east, journey ahead, facing west, delay the deal. North, be cautious with elders. South, Fertility news incoming. Second lesson, sequence. A double sneeze is a warning. A triple is rare, means someone's hiding something. A single, loud sneeze in silence. The ancestors are impatient. Third, tone, wet, uncertainty. Dry, confirmation. Half cough, trickster energy. Your mentor once stopped a marriage proposal because the groom sneezed during his vow. Even the spirits objected, she said. The elders gather around the tea. You're handed a scroll to record sneeze data, time direction, who sneezed, possible interpretation, current wind pattern, yes, that too. At one point, a respected merchant sneezes mid-sentence. Your mentor stiffens. Did you hear the hitch? She asks. You nod. He's lying about something. You glance over. He's describing a shipment of yams that definitely didn't exist last week. By mid-morning, the council consults your notes before finalizing a trade route. 2 northbound sneezes and 1 to the left side, you report, but followed by a confirmed downward sigh. They cancel the caravan. Someone claps for you. You feel both powerful and slightly absurd. There's a fringe belief that people with particularly dramatic sneezes were once recruited as sneeze oracles, kept well-fed, and brought into meetings just to see what their sinuses said. One even claimed to predict drought based on his uncle's throat-clearing habits. Your mentor doesn't comment on this. She just says, interpretation is about listening, not performing. After lunch, you sit with a group of women weaving mats. One of them sneezes mid-knot. Everyone pauses. Your mentor looks at you. You hesitate. Direction, she prompts. West, you say. Tone? Muted, no echo. Interpretation, you consider. Someone in the family is delaying a decision. She nods. Now tell her gently. You walk over, kneel and say, the sneeze says now is a better time than later. The woman smiles, shifts the mat and says, I'll tell my brother to marry the girl already. Laughter erupts. You're learning. This job isn't just about reading signs. It's about giving meaning without fear, about creating space for decisions to happen with grace. As the sun lowers, a final sneeze comes from a child chasing a chicken. Loud, joyful, sideways, you and your mentor smile. Prosperity, she says. You record it. That night, over tea and firelight, your mentor tells you about the great sneeze of harvest season, a triple-echoed sneeze from a respected elder that was followed by a year of bounty. Or maybe, she says, we just believed better after hearing it. You ask if every sneeze really means something. She shrugs. Some are just sneezes, but when the stakes are high, even a sneeze can guide us. You nod, then sneeze softly yourself, once, downward. She eyes you. Better drink water before bed. That one felt suspicious. You both laugh. The fire crackles, and somewhere in the dark another sneeze marks the closing of a curious, mystical, slightly ridiculous day. You're halfway through your morning porridge when someone places a sealed gourd in your lap and whispers, don't jostle it. A second later, don't open it. Then, after a suspicious pause, don't listen to it either. Which is, of course, the first moment you lean your head slightly closer and hear something. A slosh, a rattle, a sound like dry beans sliding across leather. Congratulations, you're now in possession of a cursed calabash, and today you are apprenticing as its reluctant courier. The woman in charge, Maketu, is tall, sharp-voiced, and suspiciously unbothered by cursed objects. She motions for you to follow her across the village, through the market, and into the shaded grove behind the shrine. There are rules, she says, not looking back. The gourd doesn't like heat, must be carried upright. And whatever you do, don't let it tip over in front of elders. They get dramatic. You nod slowly, clutching the calabash like it might bite. This isn't a joke. In many communities across medieval West Africa, gourds were used to store medicines, charms, or protective objects. But some gourds, like the one currently sweating in your hands, were rumoured to contain curses, sealed by incantation, sealed further with wax, and passed only through highly specific rituals. Historians still argue whether these cursed calabashes were actually spiritual containers or just social deterrents, threats in symbolic form. But one thing's certain, no one wants to be responsible if one goes off. You're instructed to deliver the gourd to an herbalist, cross the river. The catch? You must not pass through the central market, too crowded, too noisy, and too many people who might ask questions. So you take the side paths through the dry garden plots, past the weaver's compound, where an old man pauses his loom work to say, "You're holding that like it talks." You nod. He nods. Nothing more needs to be said. Halfway through the walk, the gourd shifts. Just a little, not violently, but just enough to make your heart attempt escape through your ribs. Maketu, who's walking a few paces behind, doesn't react. "It always does that around midday," she says. "Ignore it, unless it whispers your name. Then walk faster." There's a fringe belief that cursed calabashes only activate when someone attempts to open them without permission. That sounds comforting, until Maketu adds, unless of course the curse was timed. You don't ask for clarification. Crossing the river is the trickiest part. You must hand the calabash gingerly, reverently, to a boy in a canoe who looks like he's 3 sneezes away from falling in. He accepts it with both hands, holds his breath, and paddles across in total silence. You meet him on the other side. He's pale. "It growled," he whispers. You say nothing, just nod, take it back. Keep walking. When you reach the herbalist's hut, she doesn't greet you. She just motions for you to place the calabash on a low stool surrounded by white chalk symbols. You do, carefully. She sprinkles dried leaves over it, murmurs something in a language you don't know, then seals the door behind her with a soft click. Maketu sighs. Good. Now we drink tea and pretend none of this happened. You both sit under a neem tree, sipping something sweet and spicy, while trying to forget that you just spent the better part of an hour babysitting a possibly enchanted soup container. There's a long silence. Then Maketu says, "I once dropped one of those." You stare. She shrugs. The crops failed, 3 chickens fought each other, and a man confessed to stealing mangoes from a widow. Might have been coincidence. You nod very, very slowly. As the sun begins to dip, you're handed a different gourd, this one clean, light, and filled with tamarind juice. A reward. Maketu clinks her cup to yours and says, "You carried fear well. That's all this job is, walking carefully through people's stories." And tonight, as you lie in your cot, your hands still slightly stained from the gourd's wax seal, you feel oddly accomplished. You didn't scream, you didn't trip, you didn't accidentally open a vortex. You carried something strange, mysterious, and powerful, and you listened the whole way. Not bad for a day's work. You wake to the sound of gentle brushing, soft, rhythmic, almost musical. Not sweeping, not scrubbing, brushing, the kind of brushing reserved for something delicate. Or someone. You pull back the tent flap to find an elderly woman hunched over a stool, polishing a sandal. Beside her lies a row of leather footwear, some worn thin, some new and unworn, all carefully arranged in pairs. But no one stands nearby. No one waits to wear them, because today you are apprenticing in one of the gentlest, most unexpectedly moving roles you've yet encountered. Sandal polisher for the departed. The woman, who introduces hers, herself only as Baba Fati, doesn't look up from her work. "They're to look their best," she says, simply. "Just because their feet are gone doesn't mean they don't deserve shine." You nod, unsure if you're meant to speak aloud. She pats the space next to her, hands you a cloth, and gestures to a faded pair of sandals with worn-down soles and loose stitching. "Start with these, light pressure. The sole leaves last through the feet, so we show respect." You glance around. There's no funeral happening today, no visible ceremony, just quiet preparation. Because in this village, people often leave their sandals behind when they pass. And when they do, someone like Baba Fati, someone like you now, is tasked with readying them, not to return, but to remember. Historians still argue whether this tradition had symbolic or spiritual origins. Some say polished sandals allowed the deceased to walk cleanly into the next life. Others claim it was about closure, for the family, for the community, for the leather itself. There are records from centuries ago showing entire households preserving a patriarch's sandals like sacred relics. One even placed them on the roof to remind future generations where they came from. You gently rub a layer of oil into the cracked straps of the first pair. They smell like dust and dried flowers. Baba Fati hums beside you, the tune old and unhurried. "This one," she says, tapping the heel, "belonged to a man who laughed with his teeth but cried with his shoulders." You don't know what that means. You don't ask. You move to the next pair. Small, narrow, delicate, almost certainly worn by a child. You pause, cloth in hand. Baba Fati nods solemnly. "Some feet leave sooner than others," she says. We polish so they don't forget joy. Mid-morning, a woman arrives to deliver a pair of sandals wrapped in indigo cloth. She says little, just hands them over with bowed head. Baba Fati receives them as if they were royalty. She unfolds the cloth slowly, kisses her fingers, and touches the toe. "She walked far," she whispers. You polish those sandals slowly, tenderly, not because they'll be worn again, but because someone loved the person who wore them. Someone wants them remembered shining. There's a fringe belief that if a sandal creaks after being polished, the departed has something left to say. You hear a few faint creaks, but Baba Fati only smiles. They're just stretching. Spirits have to walk long paths too. You're told not to decorate the sandals, not to paint them, not to improve them. "We don't make them something they weren't," she says. "We just remind the world they mattered." She shows you how to fold the cleaning cloth a certain way so it doesn't leave streaks, how to hold the sandal by its heel, not its toe. Touching the toe without care is like speaking over someone's grave, she explains. Later, a young boy arrives to collect a pair, his grandmother's. He clutches them close, whispering something to the straps. You don't hear what he says. You don't need to. By evening, the sandals are lined up neatly on a woven mat. Some will be stored in ancestral huts. Others will be gifted to family members. A few will be buried in ceremonial mounds, not because the body needs them, but because the memory wears them still. Baba Fati pours tea, then offers you a cloth-wrapped pair. "Yours," she says. You blink. "But I'm alive." "Yes, but one day someone will need to remember how you walked." You hold the sandals, simple, well-made, exactly your size. You say nothing, just nod. That night, as you lie down with the scent of leather and beeswax clinging to your hands, you feel something soft settle in your chest. You haven't just cleaned shoes, you've tended memories, and in a world that forgets so easily, that might be the holiest work of all. The morning begins with rhymes, strange ones, softly muttered couplets swirling through the steam of a hibiscus kettle, each line just ambiguous enough to mean either prophecy or poetry. You sit cross-legged outside a reed-walled hut, trying to make sense of a murmured stanza that begins, "The frog wears silence, where the mango used to grow." You're apprenticing today under the River Oracle's tea warmer, a job that is one part butler, one part bodyguard, and one part, human thermometer. Inside the hut is the Oracle herself, Ma Neal, silver-haired, sharp-tongued, and draped in 6 different scarves, each supposedly representing a different season of the spirit. She does not speak to clients directly, not until her tea is exactly the right temperature. That's your job. You crawl into the inner chamber with great care, the delicate clay pot between your palms. You're not allowed to pour, only place, gently, and only if the tea has stopped steaming but still feels warm through 3 layers of cloth. Too hot, and she scowls. Too cold, and she sighs like you've killed the moon. You get it almost right on the second try. She hums. A good sign. You retreat, sit outside, and wait. The first visitor is a woman with a covered basket. She offers no name. Ma Nyale simply says, "Ask your real question." The woman doesn't flinch. Will my son return before the storm season? The oracle lifts the tea, sniffs it once, then recites, He comes with thunder underfoot, but not before the goat is sold. The woman nods once, silently counting her livestock. You record the session in the ledger. Visitor, female, mid-30s. Basket, contents unknown. Inquiry, family, return. Response, indirect, temporal marker. Actual goat sale. Tea temp, solid historians still argue about the role of tea in such oracular sessions. Was it sacred, medicinal, merely a pacing mechanism? Some scholars believe the warmth of the tea served to unlock ancestral wisdom. Others suggest it was just a way to keep the oracle's throat hydrated while she rhymed cryptically for hours. Either way, if the tea's wrong, the answer's wrong. So you warm, pour, wait. Midday brings a nervous merchant, fingering the edges of his cloak. He wants to ask about trade, but avoids direct phrasing. The oracle speaks. The river swells at the wrong song's sound. Trade only when the fish leap twice. The merchant stares, confused. You scribble code word, fish behavior, metaphor, possible delay warning, emotional tone, hesitant. Then, as always, tea refill. There's a rhythm to this. Boil, cool, present, interpret. The oracle rarely acknowledges you, but her fingers brush the rim of the cup every time, perhaps checking for vibration, perhaps for reverence. You start to notice which blends result in sharper phrasing. Hibiscus brings rhymes, mint brings riddles, ginger, warnings. There's a fringe belief that oracles never actually saw the future, but used the steam patterns from their tea to guess what people feared most. You watch the next session closely. A young man asks whether he'll find love before the dry season. The oracle sips, then chants, A drum can echo through an empty hut, but only if the broom has left. He thanks her, bewildered. You suspect she just told him to clean his house. Late in the day, Ma Neal lets out a rare chuckle. Someone brought mango leaf again. Spirits get greedy when it's mango. You note it down, underlined. She pauses only once, turning toward you directly. You listen like someone who will one day speak, she says, then adds, but not until you've boiled a better cup. You take that as encouragement. Your final task is to prepare her sleeping tea, milder, sweeter, mixed with crushed flowers and a pinch of ground kola nut. She drinks it in silence, then mutters one last rhyme. When tea stops singing, so will I. You don't write that one down, just remember it. That night, you sleep near the coals where the last pot cools. Your dreams are filled with half-rhymes and slow-swirling steam. You wake unsure whether you've learned to interpret tea or just gotten very good at pretending. Either way, tomorrow, the cup must be ready. You're already sweating before the sun's up, crouched behind a fence, fashioned from hollow reeds, clutching a carrot like it's a ceremonial baton. Beside you, a woman with a tambourine and a wildly feathered hat whispers, "Don't blink when the drum hits. It startles them." You're not in danger, not exactly, but you are training in one of the most unexpectedly nerve-wracking performance jobs in any medieval African court. Hare tamer in royal parades. Yes, hares. Long-legged, floppy-eared, anxiety-ridden bundles of fluff that must walk in synchronized, regal fashion in front of visiting dignitaries, and your job today is to keep them from bolting into the bush like furry traitors. The hares in question? 5 of them, all named after minerals. Copper, flint, obsidian, mica, and, worryingly, sulfur. They respond best to rhythm, your mentor explains, and root vegetables, and sometimes guilt. She taps her tambourine. You wave your carrot. Flint hops. Obsidian wiggles his ears. Sulfur immediately tries to chew through the royal procession banner. You intervene, gently, politely, while internally panicking. Historians still argue why certain West African royal courts featured trained animals in formal ceremonies. Some believe the parades were symbolic, every creature representing a virtue. The hare supposedly stood for alertness, resourcefulness, and fertility. Others claim it was just flair. After all, nothing says power like perfectly choreographed wildlife. But this isn't easy. Hares, it turns out, are terrible at protocol. Your mentor hands you a small gourd rattle. Use this when they start veering left, unless it's after the third drumbeat. Then you don't rattle, you hum. You do not ask for clarification. Instead, you begin the practice march. The hares are led by thin woven leashes, decorative only. Real control comes through tone and pacing. You sing a soft cadence taught that morning. Ing. Step and sniff, hop and hold. Let your royal tale unfold. Copper nails it. Mika spins in a circle. Sulphur sits down and refuses to move. Sulphur's protesting, your mentor says with a sigh. He knows there's no crowd yet. He likes attention. You coo encouragements. Nothing. She pulls a dried mango strip from her sash. Sulphur perks up instantly and resumes marching. He's our diva, she adds. The rest of rehearsal is a blur of carrot bribery, strategic clapping, and emergency whistling. You learn that hares respond to eye contact, but only if you blink slowly. You learn that too much enthusiasm triggers what your mentor calls panic hops. You learn that if you yawn during rehearsal, the entire formation collapses. Micah took that personally. There's a fringe belief among parade scholars that the animals actually sensed political tensions. That when hares ran the wrong direction, it was a warning sign. In one story, a rogue rabbit bolted just before a royal envoy announced war. They know things, your mentor whispers. Always listen to their ears. By afternoon, the crowd gathers. Dignitaries from a neighbouring province, musicians, drummers, gawkers. You stand at the ready, your sash perfectly pressed, your gourd rattle tucked just so into your belt. The signal is given. Drums begin. You hum, they hop. Copper, flint, mica, obsidian, elegant, composed, practically floating. Sulphur? He pauses, he sniffs. Then, with everyone watching, he performs a perfect spiral hop-spin hop. The crowd gasps, applauds. Your mentor exhales. He's showing off. Again. You smile. The parade concludes. Without incident. The hares are rewarded with tender yam slivers. You're handed a ceremonial pin, carved from bone and shaped like a hare's ear. For poise under pressure, they say. That night, you help settle the animals into their sleeping baskets. Sulphur curls up beside your sandal. You whisper, you did great. He twitches one ear. You choose to interpret that as gratitude. As you lie back beneath the star-pricked sky, you think of how strange this job was, and yet how precise, how serious, how beautiful, in its own absurd way. Because sometimes diplomacy isn't loud speeches and bronze shields. Sometimes it's getting 5 small, easily panicked creatures to hop in harmony. And today, you made that happen. The night is warm and strange. You lie awake on your mat, listening to the steady drumming in the hills and the distant call of someone singing about rivers and revenge. Tomorrow, you're told, you'll be carrying messages, not on foot, not on paper, not with flags, but with riddles, because your new role is not soldier, not courier, but something far sneakier, wartime riddle writer. You wake to find your mentor already dipping a sharpened reed into blackened ink made from boiled bark and burnt palm fibre. She doesn't greet you, just starts mumbling. If one branch bends and 2 birds fly, what remains under the drum? She pauses, looks up. What do you think that means? You shrug. Exactly, she says, and that is why no one can intercept it. You're confused, but fascinated. In times of conflict, especially across regions where open declarations of war could cause clan chaos or foreign interference, messages were sometimes hidden in song, story, or cryptic verse. A riddle could carry instructions, warnings, or even rallying calls disguised as harmless folklore. Historians still argue whether these riddle codes were universally understood or unique to specific regions. Some believe they were a women-led form of communication, precise, poetic, and slippery. Others claim only griots could truly interpret them. Your mentor, she says, anyone can read, few can feel. You spend the morning listening to old riddles spoken aloud. The pot boils, but the fire is silent. 3 heads meet at the river, but only 2 drink. A drum tied upside down still echoes in the flood. Each line feels like a puzzle, a whisper in code. You try writing one. The mango falls when the goat blinks. Your mentor reads it, blinks. That's either genius or deeply confusing. Let's keep it. You learn that each riddle must obey the secret rules of wartime messaging. It must rhyme just enough to sound folkloric. It must never mention people or places directly. It must allow two meanings, one innocent, one sharp. And it must never be remembered too well. If it becomes a proverb, your mentor warns, you failed. It's not meant to survive peace. You follow her to a hidden spot behind the village's ceremonial drum platform, where messages are sometimes left beneath stone markers. She retrieves a folded strip of cloth. Inside a single line. Before the lion wakes, the shadow must move. She whispers, "This means attack at dawn from the west." You deliver it, carefully, discreetly, to a drummer who will weave it into a rhythm later that evening. You ask how he'll signal it. She grins. He'll play one rhythm, then repeat it backward. You're beginning to realize how layered this world is. Nothing is ever said directly. Everything is said precisely. There's a fringe belief that the best riddle writers were chosen young, trained to speak in code from childhood. One woman, your mentor says, once hid battle orders in a lullaby. They sang their way to victory, she whispers, and no one even noticed until the drums changed. You spend the afternoon crafting new riddles. The clay pot dreams of a fire it's never touched. When the well is dry, the frogs start lying. A goat with no tail walks without shame. Each one tells something, if you know what to hear. Your final challenge of the day is to deliver a message to a traveling merchant, who, if you're right, is also a scout. You approach him in the market, holding a basket of yams. As you hand it over, you recite, "Two roots share one shadow, but only one grows straight." He pauses, nods, says, "Tell the second shadow to wait 2 nights." You smile, message received, message returned. That evening you sit with your mentor by firelight, ink still drying on your fingers. You ask her what her favorite riddle is. She replies without hesitation. When the antelope eats in the lion's eye, the forest must choose silence. You write it down, but she stops you. "Not that one," she says. "That one isn't meant to travel." You fall asleep whispering verses to yourself, lines you might never say aloud, but carry like coals in your mouth, warm, dangerous, ready, because sometimes the loudest cries of war begin as riddles whispered in the dark. You wake to find a bird perched just outside your tent, blinking at you like it knows something, not threatening, not friendly, just observant. Your mentor chuckles behind you. "That's your client," she says. "Today you're apprenticing with the bird translator of the Iron Circle." You blink at her, blink at the bird, back at her. "Don't worry," she adds. "You won't actually have to speak bird. You'll just need to interpret the message humans tied to it." You're not entirely reassured. In this part of the region, it's long been tradition for birds, especially clever, trainable ones like hornbills or speckled bush shrikes, to carry messages between villages, not just notes, but tokens, wrappings, even scents sealed into feathers or tucked in pouches tied to their ankles. Some scholars argue it was an elaborate form of pigeon post. Others think it was closer to ritual than logistics, more about symbolism, trust, and a little performance art. Your mentor just calls it sky gossip. You crouch beside a low stone table, where a large hornbill perches regally, its head tilted just so. Tied to its ankle, a scrap of dyed cloth and a curled piece of bark. Your mentor opens it slowly. You smell clove oil, see a thread of red string, and scrawled in charcoal. The well has 3 shadows now. You glance at her, puzzled. She nods. They mean the drought's deepened, 3 families fetching at once. This isn't about water, it's about pressure. You write it down in the ledger, alongside bird ID, cloth colour, and scent tag. Your next lesson is scent reading. Some messages are too dangerous to write. Instead, The sender will soak the wrapping in an aromatic oil, lemongrass for urgency, mint for mourning, clove for stress, smoked palm kernel for trade dispute. And if it smells like ashes, your mentor says, don't open it. Just tell the elder. Your job is not to judge, just to receive, decode, and return the birds with the correct reply. Mid-morning, a small, dusty bird arrives with no message, only a single red bead tied to its left leg. Your mentor frowns. That's the signal for danger past. Must be from the southern ridge. She unties the bead and replaces it with a black one. They'll know what it means. You're beginning to see that this isn't just communication. It's coordination, memory, a living code that updates with every feathered arrival. There's a fringe belief that certain birds became so well trained they learned to change routes when political winds shifted. One was said to have defected intentionally to a rival village during a leadership dispute. Your mentor snorts at this. Birds aren't loyal, but they are observant, which makes them smarter than half the people I know. Your own task arrives after midday, a dark grey bird with a limp and a leather strip tied around its middle. Inside the wrapping, 3 seeds, 2 green feathers, and a single line. The young one speaks too much. You're told this is a warning, not a threat. A village elder's subtle way of saying, keep that apprentice quiet during council. The response? You write, the drum speaks only after dusk. She approves. Poetic? Slightly smug? Good. You attach it, gently feed the bird a pinch of millet and send it back skyward. By evening, you've logged 7 birds, 4 messages, and 1 completely untraceable parrot. Rot that simply arrived, screamed too many yams, and left. Your mentor claps your shoulder. You've done well, you didn't flinch, you didn't misread the string codes, and you didn't accidentally send a love message to the warrior's camp. That's a win. You help her prepare a perch for the night, birds need rest too, and tuck a few of the less flighty ones into soft baskets lined with palm leaves. As the sun bleeds into the treetops and the last bird settles in, your mentor offers you a final thought. This work's not about wings, she says. It's about what people dare to say when no one's watching. Birds carry what we're too careful, or too afraid, to speak aloud. You nod. You understand now. Some messages ride the wind, but it takes someone on the ground to listen. You're barefoot in a forest clearing before sunrise, surrounded by half-buried gourds and odd spirals carved into the dirt. The air smells like wet leaves and roasted salt. A woman in a bark-stained robe hands you a stick of charcoal and says, "Today we let the trees choose." You're apprenticing with a dream interpreter for the forest trials, and things are about to get very weird. Your mentor's name is Ajay, and she doesn't talk much, not until she's sure you've emptied your morning thoughts, which apparently means sitting in total silence for 13 breaths while imagining your face is made of bark. It's peaceful, actually. She finally speaks. In these lands, when someone seeks truth they won't admit to, they don't go to priests. They sleep under trees, the right trees. She points to a cluster of towering iroko and baobab, all marked with red string. Each one dreams differently. You'll help us listen. Historians still argue whether forest dream rituals were literal visions, psychological confessions, or just a highly structured nap. But among the people here, it's taken as fact if you sleep under the right tree with a question in your heart, it will whisper back. Age hands you a cloth and sends you off to prepare a sleeping mat for a visiting dreamer, a nervous young man who wants to know if he's truly ready to marry. Not if she loves him, Ajay says with a grin. If he's ready, a rarer question. The dreamer lies down under a shade tree. You scatter charcoal symbols nearby, swirls, loops, one spiral like an ear. You're told this is the listening pattern. He sleeps, you wait. He snores, you wait longer. And then a twitch, a mutter, and a soft gasp. When he awakens, you offer water and ask nothing. It's his job to speak first. I was chasing a goat, he says, but its hooves turned to spoons. and it kept stirring a pot I couldn't reach. You glance at AJ. She just nods slowly. Classic spoon-hoof dream, she murmurs. He fears being outpaced by responsibilities. You write it down in the forest ledger. Tree, Shay symbols used, ear spiral. Dream symbols, goat, spoons, unreachable pot. Interp, hesitance toward commitment. Chores, advice, delay engagement until after harvest season. She then folds a leaf around a pinch of ash and gives it to the dreamer to place under his pillow for the next 3 nights. To simmer the truth, she says. You don't ask, you're learning not to. Another dreamer arrives, a woman who won't say what she seeks, that's fine. The trees will know she chooses the tallest Iroko. You help tie her chosen cloth to a branch and mix a bit of crushed kola nut with ground snail shell to place at the roots. She sleeps. When she wakes, she says, I was holding a baby, but its eyes were the moon and I couldn't look away. RJ nods, serious now. Something new is coming, but she's afraid it'll eclipse everything else. You note, tree, Iroko, offering, kola, tuss snail, dream, moon-eyed, baby, tone, or, dread, inter, approaching life change, caution advised. There's a fringe belief that trees keep part of each dream they host, that some trees grow bent because of too many nightmares. Others bloom early when they're full of joy. You glance at the shade tree from earlier. Its branches seem a little smug. As the sun sets, one final visitor arrives. She doesn't speak at all. Just sits under a baobab, her face hard to read. No symbols this time. AJ simply nods and says, let the old one do the work. An hour later, the woman wakes, eyes shining with tears. She whispers, he's already forgiven me. Then she walks away, lighter somehow. No one writes that one down. That night, RJ offers you a mat and tells you to choose your own tree. You lie under the branches, tracing leaf shadows on your chest, wondering what question you carry. The dream is strange. You're walking a path made of sandals, each one familiar, some worn, some polished, and all of them whispering your name in different voices. When you wake, RJ is watching. No interpretation needed, she says. You're carrying stories, and they remember your footsteps. You don't reply, just breathe. And somehow that feels like an answer. You're bent over a mound of ash, blowing gently through a hollow bone to reveal the patterns beneath. Behind you, someone jingles a pouch of pebbles and mutters about ungrateful spirits who don't read the signs properly. You glance at the sky as if that might help. Today, you're apprenticing with a footprint augur, a reader of steps, a tracker of moods, and, as it turns out, a deeply opinionated philosopher on the subject of how people walk. Your mentor is Gogo Mibara, who wears a tunic patched with dyed symbols and walks with a slow, gliding shuffle that suggests either supreme wisdom or extremely sore knees. Walking, she tells you as you follow her through the early morning mist, is a confession made with your ankles. She points at a messy swirl of footprints near the village edge. See that? You squint. Someone running? She tuts. Someone lying, running with hesitation in the heels. Shame makes you slap the earth differently. You say nothing. She nods, satisfied. In this community, and in others recorded across medieval West Africa, footprint reading was more than just practical tracking. It was social, spiritual, even judicial. Where a person stepped, how heavily they landed, which way their toes pointed, it all told a story, not just of where they'd been, but who they were becoming. Historians still debate whether footprint augury was a true system of belief or an elaborate folk practice, useful mostly for community mediation, but Gogo Mibara doesn't bother with theory. If they don't want me to know, she says, they can fly. She hands you a broad-bladed broom and shows you how to gently sweep ash over a trail to reveal hidden impressions. Some are shallow, almost dismissive. Others press deep into the dirt, like thunder marks. Emotional weight, she says. That one's mother-in-law was visiting. You learn to distinguish toes, slightly inward, uncertainty. outer foot drag are carrying a grudge, irregular pacing, either illness or poetry. Hard to tell, she mutters. Heel first walk, overconfidence, or new sandals. By midday, you're invited to read a fresh trail near the shrine. Someone has taken 3 slow steps, then stopped entirely. A circular scuff marks the last spot. She changed her mind, you offer. Gogo raises an eyebrow. Why, you think? Conflict. The steps were deep at first, like determination, but the scuff shows retreat. She considers, then nods. Maybe you won't embarrass me after all. There's a fringe belief that footsteps absorb emotion, and that the ground remembers them. In rare cases, it's said that the earth will echo a guilty step for days, no matter how much you sweep. Gogo points out one such path where flowers won't grow, even in rainy season. He stomped when he left, she says, and never apologized. You take notes in the augur's log. Case 43, step sway hesitation. Suspected reason, secret offered and retracted. Action taken, none. Soil mood, neutral, slightly, tea dry. Later, a mother brings her child worried about sleepwalking. Gogo observes the soft crescent steps outside the family hut. Light, repetitive, looping. Not a spirit, she says, just dreams chasing their own tail. She gives the child a charm of woven grass to place under his pillow. This will tangle his dreaming feet. You watch as she makes a final round, checking the ceremonial trail near the council hall. She smooths the ash, dusts the prints, then murmurs, "There will be a disagreement soon. 2 sets of tracks. Neither gives way." You don't ask how she knows. She just does. As the sun dips low, you help clean the path, sweeping carefully so tomorrow's walkers will step into fresh stories. Gogo hands you a hollow reed. Your first tool, she says, to listen through the dust. That night, lying on a mat woven from reed and palm, your feet ache. But you find yourself recalling every step you took today, where your weight landed, where you hesitated. You understand now. In a world of words, footsteps are the original handwriting. And today, you've started learning how to read between the steps. The village is unusually quiet today, as if everyone's paused mid-sentence. You stand barefoot on a woven mat, squinting into the flickering glow of a fire pit, surrounded by jars of ochre, crushed bark, and bee resin. Across from you, a woman in a cloak, dyed deep indigo, dips her fingers into a pot of ash and says, "Say nothing. The symbols speak now." You're apprenticing with the face painter of final feasts, and your canvas today isn't just a face, it's a farewell. The woman's name is Sira. She's sharp-eyed, gentle-handed, and somehow smells like both cedar and salt. Her job? To prepare the faces of the recently departed, not for burial, but for celebration. Because here, before someone is laid to rest, they are honored in a living portrait, painted directly onto their face with meaning only the community will understand. You glanced nervously at the body before you. An elder man, serene in repose, his hands folded over a carved walking stick. Sira touches his forehead gently. He was a storyteller, a stubborn one. We'll paint truth with interruptions. You're not sure what that means yet. Historians still argue over the use of facial decoration in West African funerary practices. Some say it was a blend of honor and protection, a way to mark the soul's passage while warding off lingering spirits. Others believe it was social commentary. The final face you wore told the truth about the life you led. Sira shows you the symbols, a spiral above the brow for tales told, 2 lines on the cheek to mark pride and mistake, a dot between the eyes for lessons unlearned, and a smudge at the chin, the silent footnote. Each mark is mixed with materials specific to the deceased, a pinch of soil from their home, a bit of ash from their hearth, a drop of oil from their favorite food. No one leaves this life unflavored, Sira says. You're handed a fine reed brush and instructed to paint a line, not straight, but curved, interrupted. His truth meandered, she explains. Your hand shakes at first, but soon the rhythm comes. It's not about accuracy, it's about listening, remembering, reflecting. The family gathers as the painting finishes. No one speaks, they just look, nod, and smile quietly. One whispers, "That's him, even now." There's a fringe belief that if the painting is wrong, if it misrepresents the soul, the wind will shift suddenly during the feast. Some elders still glance nervously at the sky during these moments. You do too. It stays calm. You help prepare for the feast itself. The body remains present, lying in state beside offerings of food, flowers, and hand-carved totems. The guests bring small tokens, scraps of fabric, carved symbols, pebbles with initials, things to tuck into the folds of the burial wrap later. After sunset, the dancing begins. Yes, dancing. Joyful, uneven, wild. A celebration not of loss, but of having had. People sing verses from the man's favorite stories. One child mimics his distinctive cough. An old woman lifts her skirt and performs a two-step, stubborn foot dance to roars of laughter. It's beautiful. It's weird. It's intimate. At one point, Sira leans close and whispers, "We don't paint to beautify. We paint to confess. The face is the final truth." Later that night, you help clean the brushes in river water warmed by moonlight. You realize you've memorized the symbol patterns already. Spiral for stories, slash for pride, dot for silence, smudge for the unsaid. She gives you a leftover shard of clay painted with a spiral and a line. "Keep this," she says, "in case you ever forget how someone lived or how to honor them." You hold the shard close because deep down you already know we live in bodies but we exit in stories. And today you helped someone's last story find its face. The air smells of rain even though the sky is clear. You've been led to the edge of the village where the path splits in 3 directions, each marked with a carved wooden post, each post etched with hundreds of tiny, uneven marks. Your guide today is tall, lean, and weather-beaten, with a voice like dry leaves and the kind of stare that suggests he sees before you speak. His name is Kumba, and his title is one you've only heard in whispers, the Keeper of Unfinished Journeys. He doesn't ask if you're ready, he simply gestures to the first post. "This one leads where people meant to go but didn't." You stare at the notches. "They just leave their paths here," he nods. "Not everyone finishes what they start, but even unwalked journeys deserve to be recorded." You begin to understand. These posts are memory poles, historical archives, spiritual anchors. They carry the names, or more often signs, of women who trained for jobs they never took, daughters who were betrothed, then unwed, merchants who packed their goods but never travelled, apprentices who dreamed of more but stayed. You see a small symbol, a gourd with 3 cracks tied beside a piece of string dyed red. "She was meant to be a healer," Kumba says. "But war came. She raised goats instead." Each mark is a life that changed direction. Historians still argue whether these journey markers were literal record-keeping or symbolic offerings to ancestors. Some believe they served as permission slips, asking the spirits to bless detours. Others say they warned future generations not to expect a straight path. The second post is for interrupted journeys. It's messier. Markings overlap. Threads hang loosely. "These," Kumba says, "are the ones who began but were stopped." You see a comb tied with copper wire. "A dancer," he says. "She was struck with illness during training." A strip of bark split down the middle. A negotiator caught between feuding villages. A palm seed soaked in oil. A brewer silenced by a bad harvest. He runs his fingers over a wide gash in the wood. "We don't erase them," he says. "We honor the effort. We name the intention." The third post is different. It's nearly bare. "These are for the silent ones," he says. "The women who never told anyone what they dreamed of." You look closer. Faint carvings, barely their symbols. One is just a line that curves into nothing. "Sometimes," Kumba says, "the biggest journeys never make a sound." There's a moment of stillness, then he hands you a piece of charcoal. "Add yours." You freeze. But I'm still walking. He smiles. Exactly. You draw a quiet spiral. Not tight, not loose, just unwinding, becoming. He nods. You spend the afternoon recording the new entries, adding leaves, strings, symbols offered by relatives or students. One woman brings a folded cloth and hangs it next to a half-carved flute. She wanted to play, she whispers, but her hands always trembled. Kumba thanks her. He thanks everyone. Because here the unfinished is not failure, it is memory, it is complexity, it is truth. There's a fringe belief that these posts help the afterlife understand a person better, that when the spirits meet you, they ask not just what you did, but what you meant to do. That night, you return to your mat, with fingers stained from charcoal and resin. You think of all the women you've met on this journey, painters, messengers, dancers, dreamers, walkers, watchers. Some finished what they started, some didn't. All of them mattered. You fall asleep with the image of your spiral, still fresh in your mind, still growing, still turning, and slowly, so slowly, it feels like all the footsteps, all the feathers, all the symbols and riddles and dreams have circled back here. To the place where paths begin and end, to the place where someone says, "You mattered, even if no one knew." And now, you rest. Let the hum of the night settle over your shoulders, warm and soft as worn cloth. Let the drumbeats fade into memory, their rhythm echoing only faintly now, just enough to remind you that you were once part of something beautiful, something unfinished, and that's okay. Breathe in slowly. Feel the trace of charcoal on your fingers, the weight of an untouched sandal, the whisper of a tree root growing beneath your dreams. Everything is still. Everything is known, even the things you never said aloud. Your feet are sore from walking, yes, but that means you moved forward. That means you lived. Let your thoughts slow. Let them meander, as they always do. Let them curl into themselves, like the final line of a riddle meant for no one but you. You don't need answers now. Only rest. Only stillness. Imagine a sky full of wings, each feather carrying a message. Some delivered. It's some still on the way. Yours is among them. And it will arrive. It always does. Now close your eyes. Let the last echo of sandals on sand slip gently into sleep. Let the forest keep its dreams tonight. You've carried enough stories for one journey. You've done well.